Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto was the son of the primordial god of time and goddess of death, Naruto x massive harem. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Awakening Clock. The forest blurred around Naruto as he sprinted between ancient trees, each footfall oddly silent despite his speed. 3 shuriken whistled past his ear, embedding themselves into bark with dull thuds that seemed to stretch unnaturally in his perception. Something was wrong. The world felt viscous, as though reality itself had become slightly more resistant to movement. Naruto, on your left. Sakura's warning came a fraction of a second before the attack. Enough time for most shinobi to react, but for Naruto, it seemed to echo for an eternity. The enemy ninja materialized from the undergrowth, Tanto blade gleaming with chakra-enhanced steel. In that suspended moment, Naruto observed every detail: the minuscule scratches on the blade's surface, the subtle patterns of chakra flow visible only to his suddenly hyper-aware senses, even the individual beads of sweat forming on his attacker's brow. Too slow, Naruto murmured, his voice sounding strange even to his own ears, deeper, resonant with an authority he'd never possessed. Without conscious thought, his body pivoted, right hand intercepting the attacker's wrist while his left formed a Rasengan that seemed to spiral into existence with uncanny precision. The impact sent the enemy ninja crashing through 3 massive trees before coming to rest, unconscious but alive, 50 meters away. Kakashi lowered his kunai, visible eye widening slightly. That was unexpected. What do you mean? Naruto asked, examining his own hands with confusion. I just dodged. Sakura approached cautiously. Naruto, you didn't just dodge. You vanished and reappeared. For a split second, it was like you weren't even there. Impossible. I didn't use any jutsu. He flexed his fingers, feeling a strange tingling beneath his skin, not chakra. Something more fundamental, as though his very atoms were vibrating at an unusual frequency. Sasuke's Sharingan eyes narrowed. Your chakra signature fluctuated. I saw something else overlaying your normal patterns. He deactivated the dojutsu with a slight grimace. Whatever it wasn't any technique I've ever encountered. Kakashi's posture shifted almost imperceptibly, tension gathering in his shoulders. We'll discuss this later. 4 more hostiles approaching from the north. Mission parameters remain unchanged. Retrieve the scroll and return to Konoha without engaging unless necessary. As Team 7 resumed their journey, Naruto couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had changed. The forest seemed different somehow, colors more vivid, sounds more distinct. Occasionally, he caught ghostly afterimages trailing behind his teammates' movements, like visual echoes of positions they had occupied milliseconds before. You okay? Sakura asked, dropping back to run alongside him. You look pale. I'm fine, he lied, forcing a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Just hungry. Always happens on these longer missions. She didn't believe him. Her analytical gaze assessed his condition with medical precision, but she nodded anyway. We'll reach the extraction point by nightfall. Try to conserve your chakra until then. The sun racked an arc across the sky that seemed both painfully slow and disconcertingly rapid to Naruto's perception. Time itself felt inconstant, like water flowing around rocks in a stream, speeding up, slowing down, occasionally seeming to split and rejoin itself. Twice more during their journey, enemy scouts crossed their path, and twice more Naruto found himself moving with impossible speed and precision. His body reacting before his mind fully processed the threat. By the time they made camp at the designated extraction point, a small clearing bordered by a shallow stream, darkness had fallen, and Naruto's head pounded with a strange pressure that centered behind his eyes. Take first watch, Kakashi instructed, fixing Naruto with a penetrating stare. Wake Sasuke in 4 hours. Naruto nodded, grateful for the solitude. As his teammates settled into their bedrolls, he perched on a boulder overlooking the stream, kunai balanced on his knee more from habit than necessity. The night sounds washed over him, insects chirping, water gurgling over stones, the occasional distant call of a nocturnal bird, each sound somehow both crisp and strangely elongated. The moon rose, full and luminous. casting silver light through the canopy. As Naruto gazed upward, the familiar celestial body seemed to pulse, its light bending and warping around the edges of his vision. A wave of dizziness swept through him, and he gripped the rough stone beneath him to steady himself. "What the hell is happening to me?" he whispered. As though in answer, the world around him shimmered and transformed. The forest melted away, replaced by an endless expanse of stars and nebulae, swirling in patterns that somehow resembled massive clockwork. He stood, or floated, on a platform of pure darkness that reflected the cosmos above like polished obsidian. And he was not alone. "My son." The voice resonated not through air but through Naruto's very being, each syllable sending ripples of sensation across his consciousness. The seal weakens at last. A figure materialized before him, a man of impossible stature, his form composed of constellations and cosmic dust. Where his eyes should be, two swirling galaxies rotated slowly, regarding Naruto with ancient patience. What are you?" Naruto managed, his voice sounding childish and insignificant in this vast expanse. "I am Chronos," the entity stated simply, as though this explained everything. "And you are my heir." "That's impossible," Naruto countered, surprising himself with his boldness. "My father was the fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze." A sound like planets colliding echoed through the void. Laughter, Naruto realized with a start. Minato was many things: brilliant, courageous, worthy of great respect, but he was not your biological father. He was, however, an excellent guardian who gave his life to protect you and implement the necessary seals. Seals. Naruto's hand instinctively went to his stomach, where the nine-tails seal remained. "Not that one," Chronos clarified, "though they are connected. The seal I speak of was placed upon your divine essence, the inheritance of my power and that of your mother." "My mother, Kushina Uzumaki loved you as her own," Chronos said, his voice gentling. "She died protecting you, and that sacrifice grants her every right to be called your mother. But the one who carried your divine spark was another." Quote, the starscape shimmered, and beside Chronos appeared a female figure formed of shadows and negative space. Where the time god was built of stars and light, E was composed of their absence, a perfect silhouette cut from the fabric of existence itself. "Shinigami," Naruto breathed, recognizing the death goddess from ancient scrolls he'd glimpsed in the Hokage's library. "My beloved," Chronos acknowledged, "the goddess of death and transitions. And your true mother." The shadow woman reached toward Naruto, her touch cool but not unpleasant as it brushed his cheek. "Our child," she whispered, her voice the sound of final breaths and falling leaves. "How I have watched you grow." "This is insane," Naruto protested, though something deep within him resonated with their presence. "I'm just Naruto Uzumaki, ninja of the hidden leaf. Future Hokage." "You are all of those things," Chronos agreed. "And you are also the first being born of both time and death, a convergence that threatens the very balance of existence. That is why you were hidden among mortals, your powers sealed until you were ready. And now," Shinigami continued, "the seal breaks. Your heritage awakens." "Why now?" Naruto demanded. "Because it must," Chronos answered simply. "The convergence approaches. Events set in motion millennia ago reach their culmination. You will be needed." Needed for what? But the cosmic expanse was already dissolving around him, the divine figures fading like mist before the morning sun. "We will speak again," Chronos promised as the vision collapsed. "The blood of time flows through your veins. Learn to feel its current." "Wait," Naruto called, reaching toward the fading apparitions. "I don't understand. What am I supposed to?" "Naruto." He snapped back to reality, nearly tumbling from his perch on the boulder. Sasuke stood before him, irritation evident in his posture. "Your watch ended an hour ago," the Uchiha said flatly. "I've been waiting for you to wake me." "Sorry," Naruto muttered, disoriented. "I must have dozed off." The lie tasted bitter on his tongue, but how could he explain what had happened? Sasuke's eyes narrowed. "Your chakra was fluctuating again. I could feel it from the campsite. Just a weird dream." HMPH. Sasuke didn't pursue the matter, but his gaze lingered on Naruto for a moment longer than necessary. "Get some rest. You look like hell." Naruto nodded gratefully and made his way to his bedroll. Despite his exhaustion, Sleep eluded him as his mind raced with implications of the vision. Gods. Divine heritage. It was too fantastic to believe, and yet. He raised his hand in the darkness, focusing on the sensation he'd experienced earlier. For a breathtaking instant, his fingers seemed to blur, leaving tracers of themselves hanging in the air like ghostly echoes. Not a trick of the light. The air around his hand had actually distorted, as though time itself had briefly stuttered. Dawn broke with a crimson intensity that painted the forest in bloody hues. Team 7 broke camp efficiently, erasing all evidence of their presence before continuing their journey toward Konoha. The mission had been simple enough: infiltrate a minor lord's compound, retrieve a sealed scroll containing intelligence about potential threats to the Land of Fire, and return without detection. The scroll now rested securely in Kakashi's pack. "We'll take the eastern route through the valley," Kakashi announced. "Less cover, but faster terrain. We should reach Konoha by midday tomorrow." As they descended from the forested hills into the more open valley below, Naruto's unease grew. The strange sensations from the previous day had not abated. If anything, they had intensified. Occasionally, the world around him seemed to stutter, brief moments replaying themselves like a scratched record. Nobody else appeared to notice these temporal hiccups, reinforcing his fear that something was fundamentally wrong with his perception. "Kakashi-sensei," he finally said as they paused at a stream to refill their canteens. "I need to talk to you about." The Jonin's hand shot up, silencing him instantly. "Everyone down," Kakashi hissed, dropping into a crouch. Team 7 reacted instantly, flattening themselves against the earth. Not a moment too soon, a barrage of kunai embedded themselves in the ground where they had been standing. 8 of them, Sasuke whispered, Sharingan activated. "Surrounding us." Jonin-level chakra signatures, Kakashi confirmed. "Not the same group we encountered yesterday." "Hunter Nin," Sakura observed, noting the distinctive masks as their attackers emerged from cover. "But not from any village I recognize." The leader stepped forward, his porcelain mask painted with strange, spiraling patterns that made Naruto's vision swim when he focused on them. "Surrender the child of convergence," the masked figure demanded, voice distorted by some jutsu. "The rest of you may leave unharmed." Kakashi rose slowly, his posture deceptively casual. "I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about." "Do not play ignorant, Kakashi of the Sharingan. We sense the awakening. The bloodline stirs in your student." Naruto felt his teammates' questioning gazes, but kept his focus on the masked attackers. Something about them felt wrong. Their chakra signatures pulsed with an unusual rhythm, almost like multiple heartbeats overlapping. "Last chance," the leader continued. "Give us the boy, or die with him." Kakashi's response was swift and decisive, a lightning blade that pierced through the leader's chest before anyone could react. But instead of blood, the wound leaked a strange, silvery substance that moved with apparent intelligence, reforming the damaged tissue. "Interesting," the masked figure said, seeming unperturbed by the attack. But insufficient. What happened next unfolded in chaotic violence. The 7 remaining attackers head themselves at Team 7 with inhuman speed. Sasuke's fire jutsu engulfed 2 of them, only for the flames to bend unnaturally around their forms without causing damage. Sakura's earth technique temporarily trapped another. But the ground itself seemed to reject her control, crumbling prematurely. Naruto created a dozen shadow clones, only to watch in horror as the attackers moved through them like ghosts. Their weapons finding purchase in the duplicates, flesh with uncanny accuracy. 3 of the masked assailants converged on Naruto himself, their synchronized movements suggesting a hive mind rather than individual warriors. "We have waited millennia for your emergence," one whispered as a blade sliced toward Naruto's throat. Time slowed again, but differently now. Unlike the previous day's experiences, this was no mere perception shift. The world literally decelerated around him, attackers moving through molasses, their weapons creeping forward with glacial inevitability. Naruto found he could move normally within this slowed timestream. He sidestepped the blade aimed at his throat, noting with fascination how his own movements left blurred trails in the air. Acting on instinct, he formed a Rasengan, but the spiraling chakra behaved differently, taking on a silvery sheen similar to the strange substance that had leaked from the leader's wound. "Chronorasengan," he heard himself say. the name emerging from some buried knowledge he hadn't known he possessed. When the temporal sphere connected with the nearest attacker, reality itself seemed to fracture. The masked figure, didn't simply take damage, they experienced all possible damages simultaneously. Naruto watched in horrified fascination as the attacker aged, de-aged, disintegrated, and reformed in rapid succession, before finally collapsing into dust that scattered across multiple moments in time. The temporal distortion expanded outward from the impact point, affecting each attacker differently. Some moved with painful slowness. Others accelerated to blur-like speeds that made their movements erratic and uncontrollable. One unfortunate figure seemed to experience time in reverse, his attacks playing out awkward until he simply faded from existence. As suddenly as it had begun, the phenomenon ended. Naruto stood at the center of a clearing now littered with strange temporal debris, objects caught between states of existence. Patches of grass that had aged decades in seconds, weapons partially embedded in reality itself. His teammates stared at him with expressions ranging from shocked Sakura to calculation Sasuke to grim confirmation Kakashi. What just happened? Sakura finally asked, her medical training utterly insufficient to explain the devastation around them. The masked leader, somehow still intact despite the temporal chaos, laughed, a hollow, echoing sound. The air awakens indeed. The convergence comes. Before any of them could react, he dissolved into the same silvery substance as before, flowing into the earth and disappearing. Naruto swayed on his feet, exhaustion crashing over him in waves. Kakashi-sensei, he managed before his knees buckled. I think I know what my dream meant now. Kakashi caught him before he hit the ground. Save your strength. We need to get you back to Konoha immediately. You know something about this, Sasuke accused, his Sharingan still active as he surveyed the temporal aftermath around them. Not here, Kakashi replied tersely. These entities may have allies nearby. We move now, full speed. Despite Naruto's protests that he could travel under his own power, Kakashi hoisted him onto his back and set a punishing pace toward Konoha. Sakura and Sasuke flanked them, all pretense of a standard mission abandoned in favor of raw speed. They called me the child of convergence, Naruto said against Kakashi's shoulder as they raced through the valley. I heard, in my dream last night, I saw beings that claimed to be my parents. Not Minato and Kushina, but Chronos and Shinigami, Kakashi finished for him. I suspected as much when I saw what happened to those attackers. No human jutsu manipulates time itself. You believe me? Naruto asked, surprised. There have been rumors for years, whispers in the highest Anbu circles about your true origins. Most dismissed them as fantasy. But not you. I served under your father, Minato, Kakashi clarified. There were inconsistencies in the official account of your birth. Questions I wasn't supposed to ask. Sakura increased her pace to draw alongside them. This is insane, she hissed. Gods don't have children with humans. It's mythology, not reality. Not with humans, perhaps, Kakashi agreed cryptically. But with other divine entities. Then Kushina was a goddess too? Naruto asked, his world tilting further on its axis. No, Kushina was human. A remarkable human with Uzumaki vitality and extraordinary chakra, but human nonetheless. She agreed to be your surrogate mother after your divine mother could no longer maintain physical form in our realm. This can't be happening, Naruto muttered, his head spinning with implications. Those weren't ordinary hunter nin, Sasuke interjected, ever practical. Their chakra signatures were wrong, layered, like multiple entities occupying the same space. Because they weren't human either. Kakashi confirmed grimly. They're known as the temporal sentinels, beings that exist to maintain what they call chronological integrity. They hunt down and eliminate anomalies in the time stream. Like me, Naruto realized. Exactly like you, the child of time and death, a combination that should be impossible according to divine law. The conversation ceased as they detected another pursuit team closing from the west. Kakashi altered their course, leading them through a series of ravines too narrow for standard formation travel. The maneuver bought them precious time. But all four shinobi knew they couldn't outrun divine hunters indefinitely. As the walls of Konoha finally appeared on the horizon, Naruto's consciousness began to fade. The strain of accidental, Lee manipulating time had depleted something more fundamental than chakra. His connection to reality itself felt tenuous, as though he might slip between moments if he lost focus. "Stay with me, Naruto," Kakashi ordered. "We're almost there." Quote, "Can't. Everything's shifting. Focus on my voice. The Hokage will know what to do." But Naruto was already sliding into another plane of existence. The physical world receded, replaced by the cosmic expanse he'd experienced in his dream. This time, however, neither Chronos nor Shinigami awaited him. Instead, a familiar presence manifested, vast, ancient, and decidedly vulpine. "So," Kurama rumbled, nine tails swishing behind his massive form. "The truth reveals itself at last. You knew," Naruto accused the nine-tailed fox. "You knew what I was." "Of course I knew, Kit. Why do you think I was sealed within you specifically? No ordinary human container could hope to restrain my power. Only a being with divine essence could serve as my Jinchuriki without being consumed. Then all this time, I have been bound to the son of time and death, an irony not lost on me." The massive fox lowered his muzzle until one enormous eye was level with Naruto. "But perhaps not the curse I once believed it to be. What happens now? Am I dying?" A sound suspiciously like a chuckle emanated from the beast. "Quite the opposite. You are finally beginning to live as what you truly are. Your divine essence awakens, breaking through the seals placed upon you at birth." "I don't want to be a god," Naruto protested. "I just want to be a ninja, to protect my friends. To become Hokage. And who says you cannot be both? Even gods have purposes, Kit. Even immortals can forge connections." Something unreadable passed through Kurama's massive eye. "Not all divinity is cold and distant. Your parents proved that much. You knew my parents. My real parents. I am as old as this world, Naruto. I have known many gods in my time. Chronos was unusual among them. Less concerned with worship, more focused on maintaining the flow of time itself. And Shinigami. She understood the necessity of my existence better than most. Th and destruction are part of the natural order." The cosmic void around them pulsed, reality reasserting its claim on Naruto's consciousness. "Our time grows short," Kurama observed. "But remember, your awakening will draw others to you, both allies and enemies. The convergence your attackers spoke of is no mere prophecy, it is an astronomical certainty. When time and death produce offspring, reality itself must eventually reckon with the consequences." "That's not exactly comforting," Naruto muttered. "It wasn't meant to be. But know this, I will lend you my power more freely now. Not out of submission, but necessity. What comes for us will require both your divine heritage and my primal chakra to overcome." The void collapsed around them, and Naruto felt himself hurtling back toward his physical form. As the connection with Kurama faded, the fox's final words echoed through his consciousness. "Watch for the signs, Kit. Others with divine blood walk among humans. Some will become your greatest allies. And perhaps more." Reality slammed back into Naruto with the force of a physical blow. He found himself in the Hokage's office, laid out on a medical cot. Tsunade loomed over him, her hands glowing with diagnostic jutsu, her expression grave. "Welcome back," she said dryly. "Kakashi tells me you've had an interesting revelation about your parentage." Naruto attempted to sit up, only to be firmly pressed back down by the Hokage's hand. "Not so fast. Your chakra pathways are restructuring themselves. Move too quickly and you might accidentally stop aging altogether." "That's possible." "Apparently so. The third left extensive sealed documents about your condition, documents I was only to access if your divine abilities began to manifest." She sighed heavily. "I was hoping they never would." "So you knew too." Naruto couldn't keep the accusation from his voice. "I suspected. There were always unexplainable elements to your recovery rate, even accounting for the Nine Tails' influence. And certain medical tests produced unusual results." Naruto glanced around the room, noting that they were alone. "Where's my team?" "Debriefing with Shizune. I thought this conversation best kept private for now." "They already saw what happened. They heard what those sentinels called me." Tsunade nodded grimly. "Which means we have a security situation on our hands. Knowledge of your true nature could destabilize not just Konoha, but the entire Shinobi Alliance system." "So what happens now?" "Now, You rest and recover. Tomorrow, you begin trying to control these new abilities before you accidentally freeze the entire village in time. Her stern expression softened slightly. And we prepare for what's coming. If the temporal sentinels have found you, others will follow. As if summoned by her words, a strange pressure descended upon the room. The air itself seemed to thicken, light bending unnaturally around the corners of Tsunade's desk. With a sound like tearing silk, reality split open, revealing a swirling portal of absolute darkness. Tsunade leapt to her feet, hands already forming seals. Stay behind me. But Naruto felt no fear, only recognition. Wait, he said, rising from the cot despite the Hokage's earlier warning. I know who this is. From the darkness emerged a figure both familiar and alien, a woman of impossible beauty. Her form composed of deepest shadow outlined in silver light. Where her eyes should be, twin voids gazed outward, somehow conveying emotion despite their emptiness. Her hair floated around her head like black flame, moving against the currents of natural air. My son, Shinigami whispered, her voice simultaneously in the room and inside Naruto's mind. Tsunade's hands remained poised for attack, but uncertainty showed in her stance. Lady Death, she acknowledged cautiously. This is unprecedented. These are unprecedented times, Senju child. The goddess's attention remained fixed on Naruto. My physical manifestation in this realm cannot last long. Already the cosmic laws strain against my presence. But I had to see you, to warn you myself. Warn me about what? Naruto asked, finding his voice surprisingly steady in the presence of his divine mother. The sentinels are merely the vanguard. The Celestial Council has declared you anathema, a forbidden existence whose very nature threatens the divine order. They will send others, more dangerous than those you encountered today. Why? What have I done to them? Nothing yet, Shinigami replied. But what you might become frightens them. A being of both time and death could potentially end existence itself, or recreate it anew. That's not what I want. Naruto protested. Intention matters little to those who deal in eternal consequences. The goddess drifted closer, her form flickering like a candle in wind. Your father battles even now to create a sanctuary for you in the spaces between moments, epoch. Ed of reality where you might safely develop your powers. Then let me help him. If I'm supposedly so powerful. No, the word carried absolute authority. You are not yet ready. Your divine essence remains mostly dormant. If you faced the council now, they would unmake you completely. Then what am I supposed to do? Just wait to be hunted. You must gather allies, Shinigami instructed. Quote, others with divine heritage walk among mortals, some knowing their nature, others ignorant as you were. Find them. Together, you may stand against what comes. The darkness around the goddess began to pulse erratically. My time wanes, she observed. One final warning, my child, beware the lunar priestess. She seeks to use your power for her own purposes. Lunar priestess, who? But Shinigami was already fading. The portal collapsing around her. Her final words floated in the air after her physical form had disappeared. Trust in the fox more than you have. Ancient though his hatred may be, his wisdom is equally profound. The office returned to normal, ambient sounds rushing back in as though a vacuum had been filled. Tsunade stared at the space where the goddess had been, her expression unreadable. Well, she finally said, that complicates matters. Naruto sank back onto the cot, exhaustion claiming him once more. My whole life has been a lie. No, Tsunade countered firmly. Your experiences, your bonds, your dreams, those are all real. Your origins may be more complex than you believed, but they don't invalidate who you've become. Before Naruto could respond, a sharp knock came at the door. Enter, Tsunade called, composing herself with practiced ease. Hinata Hyuga stepped into the office, her pale eyes immediately finding Naruto on the cot. Forgive my intrusion, Lady Hokage, she said with uncharacteristic urgency. But I must speak with Naruto-kun immediately. This isn't a good time, Hinata, Tsunade began. It concerns the awakening of his divine bloodline, Hinata continued, surprising both of them with her directness. And the Hyuga clan's ancient covenant with the children of convergence. Naruto sat up straighter. How could you possibly know about that? Hinata's gaze met his without her usual shyness. Because the Byakugan was never merely a dujutsu, Naruto-kun. It was a gift from the lunar deities to those who swore to protect their descendants. And the offspring of other divine unions. The lunar priestess, Naruto whispered, recalling Shinigami's warning. Something shifted in Hinata's expression, a flicker of understanding and alarm. She contacted you directly. Then we have even less time than I feared. She turned to Tsunade with newfound authority. Lady Hokage, I must request permission to escort Naruto-kun to the sealed shrine beneath the Hyuga compound immediately. On what grounds? Tsunade demanded. On the grounds that the Celestial Council has likely already dispatched the Moon Hunters, and only He ancient protections of the sealed shrine can hide him from their sight until his awakening completes. Tsunade's eyes narrowed. How long have you known about Naruto's heritage? Since I first saw him with my Byakugan as a child. Hinata answered simply. The divine chakra signature is unmistakable to those trained to recognize it. My father has prepared me for this day my entire life, Thogue. He doubted it would come during our generation. And you never said anything? Naruto asked, hurt evident in his voice. Hinata finally showed a glimpse of her familiar gentleness. It wasn't my secret to reveal, Naruto-kun. The awakening had to happen naturally, or your divine essence might have shattered your human form entirely. Tsunade rubbed her temples, clearly fighting off a migraine. This village has too many damn secrets, she muttered. Fine, you have my permission, but I'm sending an Anbu escort. With respect, Lady Hokage, that would defeat the purpose. The sealed shrine DMITS only those with divine connection are their sworn protectors. The Anbu would be repelled at the threshold, possibly violently. Then I'm coming personally, Tsunade declared. As a Senju, I have my own claims to divine lineage. However diluted by generations, Naruto looked between the two women, his world reconfiguring itself with dizzying speed. Don't I get a say in this? No, they answered in unison. As they prepared to depart, a familiar presence materialized in the corner of the office, Kakashi, accompanied by a troubled-looking Sasuke. The temporal distortions are spreading, Kakashi reported without preamble. Objects around Naruto's apartment have begun aging backwards or accelerating forward at random. A potted plant apparently experienced 3 years of growth in 5 minutes. My succulent, Naruto mourned absently. More concerning, Sasuke added, is that I can see the distortions with my Sharingan. They're forming a pattern, concentric circles centered on Naruto himself. Like ripples in a pond. The awakening accelerates, Hinata confirmed grimly. We must reach the shrine before the ripples become a tsunami. As they moved through the village toward the Hyuga compound, Naruto became increasingly aware of temporal anomalies in his wake. Water dripping from a roof corner froze midair. A civilian child's ball bounced in slow motion. Cherry blossoms on a nearby tree bloomed, withered, and rebloomed in seconds. Focus on my voice, Hinata instructed, taking his hand without her usual hesitation. The touch of a divine guardian can temporarily stabilize your time stream. Her touch did indeed help. The anomalies became less pronounced, though they didn't disappear entirely. More surprising to Naruto was the sensation that accompanied her contact, a resonance. As though some part of her chakra recognized and complemented his own. You're more than just a guardian, aren't you? He asked quietly as they hurried through increasingly deserted streets. The Hyuga are descendants of Tsukuyomi, she admitted. Though our divine blood has thinned over generations, those in the main branch still carry enough to activate certain abilities. Like seeing divine chakra, among other things, she offered a small smile. Did you never wonder why I could always find you, no matter where you hid as a child? The Hyuga compound appeared ahead, its normally imposing gates thrown wide in anticipation of their arrival. Hiashi Hyuga himself stood at the entrance, face set in stone-like solemnity. So it begins, he said as they approached. The convergence comes earlier than the prophecies suggested. Prophecies, Naruto echoed. Later, Hinata urged, pulling him forward. Father, the inner sanctum is prepared. Since the day of his birth, Hiashi confirmed. Falling into step beside them. Though I had hoped this day would fall to the next generation, or the one after. They moved swiftly through the compound, passing curious branch family members who quickly averted their eyes from the unusual procession. Tsunade and Kakashi followed closely, while Sasuke maintained a slight distance, Sharingan still active as he monitored the temporal distortions around Naruto. Deep beneath the main house, they descended stone stairs that predated Konoha itself, worn smooth by centuries of reverent footsteps. The air grew thick with ancient chakra, not oppressive, but undeniably potent. The sealed shrine was constructed during the era of the Sage of Six Paths, Hiashi explained as they descended. It exists partially outside normal space-time, a sanctuary where divine entities could safely interact with the mortal realm without causing disruption. Like what's happening to me, Naruto surmised. Precisely. Your awakening divine essence seeks equilibrium between your mortal flesh and immortal spirit. Until that balance is achieved, reality itself will fluctuate around you. The staircase terminated in a vast underground chamber, its walls covered in intricate seals that glowed with soft blue light. At its center stood a raised dais surrounded by a circle of 13 stone pillars, each carved with symbols Naruto couldn't comprehend but somehow recognized. The circle of convergence, Hinata said reverently. Step into it, Naruto-kun. It will help stabilize the temporal fluctuations. Naruto hesitated at the edge of the circle, suddenly apprehensive. What exactly will happen to me in there? Acceleration, Hiashi stated bluntly. What might otherwise take months or years of chaotic awakening will be compressed into a controlled process of hours or days. Will it change who I am? Hinata's hand tightened around his. No more than growing from a child to an adult changes who you are. Your essential nature remains, but your understanding and abilities expand. Before Naruto could respond, a violent tremor shook the chamber. Dust and small stones rained from the ancient ceiling. They've found us sooner than expected, Hiashi said sharply, activating his Byakugan. The moon hunters breach the outer wards. Who are they? Tsunade demanded, already adopting a defensive stance. Tsukuyomi's elite guardians, Hinata explained hurriedly. Once sworn to protect divine bloodlines, they now hunt them to prevent the prophesied convergence. Another tremor, stronger this time. Naruto-kun, you must enter the circle now, Hinata urged. Once your stabilization begins, the shrine's full protections will activate. I'm not hiding while others fight my battles, Naruto protested. This isn't about hiding, Kakashi interjected. It's about surviving long enough to understand your powers. You can't fight what you don't comprehend. A third tremor brought chunks of masonry crashing down around them. Through the dust, Naruto glimpsed silver-white light pouring down the staircase, unnatural, cold, and accompanied by the sound of rhythmic chanting. Go. Hinata pushed him toward the circle with unexpected strength. I swore to protect you. Let me fulfill my purpose. The genuine plea in her voice broke through Naruto's resistance. He stepped onto the dais, and immediately the 13 pillars flared to life, each emitting a different colored light that converged above him in a swirling vortex. The temporal distortions that had plagued him intensified briefly, then snapped into focus. He could see time itself flowing around him like a visible current, streams of cause and effect, probability and certainty, all converging and diverging in patterns of breathtaking complexity. The moon hunters have breached the outer sanctum, Hiashi reported, moving to stand beside his daughter at the chamber entrance. Hinata, take your position. To Naruto's astonishment, Hinata's entire demeanor transformed. Gone was the shy, gentle girl he had known. In her place stood a warrior priestess, her Byakugan blazing with power beyond any he had witnessed from a Hyuga before. Shish. He assumed a stance he didn't recognize, more fluid than the traditional gentle fist, her hands tracing patterns in the air that left trails of lunar light. The lunar ceiling dance, she announced, her voice resonating with authority. No moon hunter may pass. The chamber entrance exploded inward, revealing 5 figures in silver-white robes, their faces concealed behind masks carved from what appeared to be moon rock. Each carried a weapon of pure lunar energy, bows, spears, and curved blades that shifted form with their wielders' thoughts. Abomination, the foremost hunter cried, pointing a spear of moonlight directly at Naruto. Your existence violates the divine compact. He is under my protection, Hinata countered, stepping forward. By the ancient covenant between Tsukuyomi and the Earth Realm, I claim guardian right over this convergence child. Your covenant is voided, false priestess. The time God's spawn must not complete his awakening. The hunter launched forward with impossible speed. Moon spear aimed at Naruto's heart. But the weapon never reached its target. It connected instead with a barrier of pure lunar energy emanating from Hinata's outstretched palms. "I reject your authority," she stated calmly, though Naruto could see the strain in her posture. The true lunar priestess acknowledges the convergence as necessary. Heresy. The hunter snarled, redoubling his attack. Chaos erupted as the remaining hunters engaged with Kakashi, Tsunade, Hiashi, and Sasuke. The confined space of the chamber limited conventional ninjutsu, forcing close quarters combat against enemies whose weapons seemed capable of cutting through almost any defense. From within the circle, Naruto watched with mounting frustration as his friends fought for his sake. The stabilization process had barely begun. He could feel his divine essence awakening cell by cell, but far too slowly to help in the current crisis. One of the hunters broke through the defensive line, launching toward the circle with a moon bow drawn. The arrow loosed, a streak of silver light aimed unerringly at Naruto's forehead. Time slowed automatically around him, the arrow creeping forward with glacial inevitability. But the circle's stabilizing effect prevented him from affecting anything outside its boundary. He could only watch as the deadly projectile inched closer. At the last possible moment, a figure interposed itself between Naruto and certain death. Hinata, moving with speed that belied her human limitations, caught the arrow of moonlight with her bare hand. Instead of piercing her flesh, the energy writhed and twisted, reluctantly conforming to her will. "I am Hinata Hyuga," she declared, her voice carrying the weight of ancient authority, direct descendant of Hamura Otsutsuki and rightful lunar priestess. "These energies answer to me." She reversed the arrow's direction with a sharp gesture, sending it back through its originator with pinpoint accuracy. The hunter dissolved into moondust, his dying cry cut short by his disintegration. The remaining hunters hesitated, clearly unprepared for resistance of this magnitude. Their momentary uncertainty provided the opening Tsunade needed. She slammed her fist into the chamber floor with chakra-enhanced strength, creating a localized earthquake that disrupted the hunters' perfect balance. "Now, Kakashi," she ordered. The copy ninja's hands flew through seals faster than the eye could follow. Earth-style. Subterranean imprisonment. The stone floor liquefied around the stumbling hunters, then resolidified with them partially embedded within it. Sasuke followed without prompting, his Sharingan spinning hypnotically as he locked eyes with each immobilized hunter in turn. "Their consciousness is temporarily suppressed," he reported after a moment. "But their divine connection makes them resistant to genjutsu. This won't hold them long." "Long enough," Hiashi stated with grim satisfaction. He gestured to the circle where Naruto stood, now fully engulfed in a column of light that cycled through colors beyond normal human perception. The awakening proceeds. Once complete, not even the full moon hunter Kadri could threaten him. Hinata maintained her position between the trapped hunters and Naruto, lunar energy still crackling around her outstretched hands. "Father, we must complete the sealing circle. With the hunters neutralized, we can accelerate the process safely." Hiashi nodded and moved to stand opposite his daughter, both now facing Naruto across the circle. They began a synchronized series of movements, not quite hand seals, but something older and more fundamental, as though they shaped reality itself rather than merely manipulating chakra. "Witnesses to the convergence," Hinata intoned, her voice layered with harmonic overtones that shouldn't have been possible from a human throat. "Stand at the cardinal points and lend your essence to the awakening." Following some instinct they couldn't name, Tsunade, Kakashi, and Sasuke moved to positions around the circle, forming a triangle around the Hyuga pair. "Blood of the forest," Hinata continued, looking to Tsunade. "Senju descendant of the sage's younger son. Your vitality anchors his mortality." "Blood of lightning," she said to Kakashi. "Borrowed sight from beyond the veil. Your adaptability bridges his transitions." "Blood of fire," she concluded, turning to Sasuke. "Uchiha descendant of the sage's elder son. Your intensity tempers his power." As she named each, lines of light connected them to Naruto, forming a complex geometric pattern that pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. The column of light surrounding him intensified, becoming almost blinding. Inside the circle, Naruto experienced existence on multiple levels simultaneously. He perceived the physical chamber with his normal senses, but also saw beyond it, layers of reality stacked upon one another like pages in a book. He glimpsed fragments of potential futures. echoes of forgotten pasts, and the gossamer threads that connected all living beings across time and space. Most prominently, he felt the divine essence within him fully awakening. No longer a foreign presence to be feared, but an integral part of his identity that had always been there, waiting to be acknowledged. Time and death, seemingly opposite forces, found harmony in his uniquely balanced nature. The ground beneath the shrine trembled once more, but not from any attack. The awakening itself generated shockwaves that rippled through multiple dimensions. In distant realms, divine entities paused in their eternal activities, sensing the birth of something unprecedented in the cosmic order. Within his mindscape, Naruto found himself standing before Kurama once more. But the Nine Tails had changed, his form now incorporating elements of cosmic energy that swirled through his chakra-like galaxies in motion. "It seems our fates are more intertwined than either of us realized," the fox observed. Nine Tails moving in complex patterns that somehow manipulated the very fabric of the mindscape around them. "You're changing too," Naruto noted. "A consequence of our connection. Your divine essence resonates with my own primordial nature. I am not merely a tailed beast, Kit, I am a fragment of the primal force that existed before gods themselves took form. Then help me understand what I'm becoming." Quote, Kurama's massive head tilted thoughtfully. "You are becoming what you always were, a nexus of time and death, capable of seeing beyond the illusion of linear existence while understanding the necessity of endings. Your human experiences provide context and compassion that pure divinity lacks. And my purpose, the convergence everyone keeps mentioning, that, the fox rumbled, is something even I cannot fully perceive. The confluence of time and death creates possibilities beyond predictable outcomes. You are, in the truest sense, unprecedented." He mindscape began to dissolve as Naruto's consciousness was pulled back toward the physical realm. Kurama's final words followed him through the transition. "Remember, allies will find you. Some through resonance, others through opposition that transforms into understanding. Trust those whose essence harmonizes with your own." Reality reasserted itself with stunning clarity. The column of light surrounding Naruto collapsed inward, absorbed into his being like water into parched earth. The geometric patterns connecting him to the others flared brilliantly, then faded to subtle threads visible only to the most perceptive awareness. He stepped forward, crossing the boundary of the circle with confident purpose. His appearance had subtly altered, his eyes now contained tiny galaxy-like spirals within their usual blue. And his hair occasionally seemed to move independently of physical air currents, as though responding to temporal breezes unfelt by others. More significantly, his presence had changed. The chaotic temporal distortions had vanished, replaced by a controlled field of influence that adjusted reality around him with precise intention rather than random effect. Each movement, left brief afterimages that faded naturally, like visual echoes of possibilities examined and discarded. The imprisoned moon hunters strained against their stone restraints, their masks cracking under the pressure of their own fear-fueled struggles. The abomination completes his transformation. One cried in despair, "The convergence cannot be prevented." Naruto approached them with measured steps, each footfall leaving a momentary impression in the stone floor before it returned to normal. "I am Naruto Uzumaki," he stated simply. "Son of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki in heart and spirit. Child of Chronos and Shinigami in blood and essence. I claim both heritages without rejecting either." He crouched before the lead hunter, meeting the being's gaze through the cracked mask. "Return to your masters with this message. I seek no conflict with the divine order. I will use my nature to protect, not destroy. But I will not allow myself or those under my protection to be hunted." With a gesture that seemed deceptively simple, Naruto tapped the stone encasing the hunters. It aged rapidly, crumbling to dust and freeing them from their imprisonment. But before they could attack or flee, he continued the motion, drawing a complex pattern in the air that left traces of silvery light. "Chronos seal. Temporal covenant," he intoned, completing the pattern with a final decisive stroke. The symbol expanded, enveloping the hunters in a network of silver-white lines that sank into their forms. They shuddered collectively, then grew still. "What did you do to them?" Tsunade asked, poised to intervene if necessary. "I bound them to their own time," Naruto explained, the knowledge flowing naturally from his awakened essence. "They cannot take hostile action against me or Anyone under my protection for one full lunar cycle. When that period ends, they are free to choose their next course of action with full knowledge of what transpired here. An elegant solution, Hiyashi acknowledged with newfound respect. You honor both aspects of your heritage, justice without unnecessary destruction. The shrine served its purpose well, Hinata observed, the lunar energy arrow. Her hands finally dissipating as she relaxed her stance. Her gaze met Naruto's without her former shyness, one divine descendant recognizing another. The awakening is complete. Not complete, Naruto corrected gently. Just begun. There's so much I still don't understand. About my abilities, about this convergence everyone fears, about the connections I sense but can't yet interpret. Those understandings will come in time, Kakashi said, then added with a hint of his usual dry humor, though I suspect, time, has a different meaning for you now. Sasuke, who had remained characteristic, silent throughout much of the proceedings, finally spoke. The threads I saw connecting you to others during the awakening, they extended beyond this chamber, beyond Konoha itself. There are others who will be drawn into whatever this convergence entails. The lunar priestess mentioned in the prophecies, Hinata confirmed. The Kitsune Queen, the Ocean Sovereign, the Thunder's Daughter, the Winter Vessel, her eyes met Naruto's with quiet significance. And others whose identities remain veiled even to my sight. All women, Sasuke noted with a raised eyebrow. A faint blush colored Hinata's cheeks, a glimpse of her former self beneath the newfound confidence. Divine convergence often manifests through compatible energies. Well, Tsunade sighed, rubbing her temples, this certainly complicates our diplomatic relations. Nothing in the Hokage manual covers. Village ninja awakens as divine entity and potentially attracts harem of similarly divine women from across the nations. Despite the gravity of the situation, Naruto couldn't suppress a small grin. Just think of it as an unusual form of alliance building. The trapped moon hunters, bound by Naruto's temporal covenant, rose to their feet in perfect synchronization. Their leader bowed stiffly, not in deference, but in acknowledgement of a binding agreement. We will observe the covenant, he stated formally. But be warned, son of convergence, the Celestial Council will not accept your existence so easily. Others will come. Let them come, Naruto replied with quiet confidence. I'll face each challenge as it arises, protecting those I care about while finding my place in this new reality. The hunters dissolved into moonlight, streaming up through the damaged ceiling toward the sky above. There Epitor left the chamber in momentary silence, broken only by the settling of disturbed dust. So, Kakashi said pragmatically, what happens now? Naruto closed his eyes briefly, sensing the 3D of possibility extending from this moment. Most remained nebulous, but one path glowed with unmistakable clarity. Now, he said, opening eyes that momentarily reflected the infinite cosmos, we prepare. The moon hunters were just the beginning. Something far larger approaches, something that will require all of us to face. As though punctuating his words, a distant roll of thunder echoed across Konoha, despite the clear sky above. Somewhere to the east, lightning flashed without clouds to contain it. To the west, ocean waters rose in unprecedented tides. To the north, unseasonal frost formed in perfect crystalline patterns. The convergence had begun. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, Death's Whisper. Dawn crept reluctantly over Konoha, painting the sky in subdued watercolors that seemed to hesitate before fully committing to the day. Naruto stood atop the Hokage monument, watching the village slowly stir to life from his perch on the fourth stone head. 3 days had passed since the incident at the Hyuga shrine, 3 days of adjustment to a new reality that still felt like a waking dream. He extended his hand, examining the almost imperceptible shimmer that occasionally surrounded his fingers, a visual manifestation of chronokinetic energy that appeared when he wasn't consciously suppressing it. With a thought, he allowed the energy to intensify. The air around his hand distorted, reality bending subtly as he isolated that small space in its own temporal bubble. A leaf caught in autumn's descent froze midair within his field of influence. Naruto studied it, appreciating details his former perception would have missed. The complex network of veins, the gradual chromatic transition from green to russet, the microscopic organisms living within its cellular structure. Impressive control for someone who just discovered these abilities. Naruto didn't startle at Kakashi's sudden appearance behind him. He'd sensed his teacher's approach 30 seconds before the Jonin had physically arrived, another new aspect of his awareness. It's getting easier, Naruto acknowledged, releasing the temporal field. The leaf resumed its journey earthward as though nothing had interrupted its fall. At least with the time aspects. And the others? Kakashi inquired, moving to stand beside his student. Naruto's expression tightened. Less predictable. I've been hearing things. Things, voices, whispers, conversations that aren't happening, or at least, aren't happening among the living. He gestured toward the village cemetery visible in the distance. They're loudest there, but I can hear them everywhere now. Fragments of final thoughts, regrets, messages never delivered. Kakashi absorbed this information with his characteristic outward calm, though Naruto could now perceive the subtle acceleration in his teacher's heartbeat that betrayed his concern. Your Shinigami heritage manifesting, Kakashi surmised. Death perception to complement your chronikinesis. It's more than perception, Naruto corrected quietly. Yesterday, I touched the bark of a dying tree near the training grounds. I could see these lines running through it, like fracture points where death was already occurring at a cellular level. And when I traced one of the lines with my finger, that entire branch disintegrated instantly, not decayed, just. He searched for the right word. Transitioned. As though I'd accelerated its death by centuries in a single moment. Kakashi's visible eye narrowed slightly. Have you experienced this with anything else? Or anyone? No. The vehemence in Naruto's denial caused a momentary temporal distortion that left brief afterimages of them both hanging in the air. He took a steadying breath. No, I've been careful not to touch anyone directly since it happened. That's why I asked to meet you here instead of coming to the training ground. Silence stretched between them, heavy with implication. Finally, Kakashi sighed, his breath fogging slightly in the cool morning air. We need to help you gain control over these aspects of your abilities as quickly as we did with the time manipulation. Lady Tsunade has authorized me to take you to a secure training location outside the village. Is that safe? For the village, I mean. What if those hunters return, or something worse? The Hyuga are maintaining a constant watch with their Byakugan. Hinata in particular has demonstrated an impressive ability to sense divine energies approaching Konoha. We'll have warning if anything comes. Naruto nodded, somewhat reassured. When do we leave? Now. Pack for 3 days. As Naruto turned to go, Kakashi added, and Naruto. No shadow clones for now. We don't know how your new abilities might manifest through them. And the last thing we need is hundreds of time-death manipulating duplicates running around. Understood. Naruto hesitated, then asked the question that had been gnawing at him since his awakening. Kakashi-sensei. Am I still human? The Jonin's expression softened fractionally. You're Naruto. Human, divine, or something in between. That essential truth hasn't changed. The answer wasn't fully satisfying. But it was sincere. Naruto accepted it with a grateful nod before vanishing in a flicker of movement too swift for normal eyes to track. 30 minutes later, they departed through Konoha's east gate, traveling without haste but with purpose. Kakashi had explained they were heading to an old Anbu training ground established during the Second Hokage's era, isolated, secure, and surrounded by natural barriers that would contain any unexpected manifestations of Naruto's developing abilities. As they traveled, Naruto noticed how differently he now perceived the world around him. Time no longer felt strictly linear. Instead, he sensed it as a flowing medium, like a complex river system with currents, eddies, and occasional stillnesses. Every living thing carried its own temporal signature, a unique rhythm of existence that began at birth and continued until death. And death was everywhere, not as something ominous, but as a natural counterpoint to life. He saw it in the falling leaves, in the moss consuming a fallen log, in the hawk diving toward unsuspecting prey. Not as an ending, but as transition, matter and energy changing forms in an eternal cycle. You're unusually quiet, Kakashi observed as they paused at a small stream to refill their canteens. Just noticing things, Naruto replied, watching water molecules tumble over one another in patterns that had always existed but that he was only now able to perceive. Anything specific? Naruto considered the question seriously. Everything's connected in ways I never realized before. When I look at this stream, I don't just see water. I see its past as clouds, its future as ocean, the countless cycles it's completed and will complete. When I look at the forest, I see generations of growth and decay happening simultaneously. That's a lot to process. It should be overwhelming, Naruto acknowledged. But somehow it feels right. Like I'm finally seeing reality as it actually is. Not just the limited version my human senses could perceive. Kakashi nodded thoughtfully. The third once told me something similar about the first Hokage's perception. Hashirama described being able to sense the life force in everything around him, past, present, and potential future all at once. Because of his connection to the Sage of Six Paths. Perhaps, divine bloodlines often manifest in unexpected ways across generations. They continued their journey through increasingly rugged terrain, eventually arriving at what appeared to be an unremarkable mountainside covered in dense vegetation. Kakashi formed a complex sequence of hand seals, then pressed his palm against a specific configuration of rocks. The stone rippled like water, revealing a concealed entrance. "Welcome to Training Ground Zero," Kakashi said as they stepped into a vast cavern illuminated by strange, phosphorescent crystals embedded in the walls. One of the most secure and isolated training facilities in the Land of Fire. The space was impressive, a natural cave system that had been expanded and reinforced with advanced sealing techniques. The main chamber stretched nearly 100 meters in diameter, with a high dome ceiling that disappeared into shadows above. Smaller chambers branched off from the main space, some clearly designed for specific types of training. "This place," Naruto murmured, sensing something unusual about the cave. "Time moves differently here." "Very good," Kakashi approved. The second Hokage created a temporal distortion field around this facility. A day inside corresponds to roughly 6 hours outside. Why would he? Naruto began, then understood. For training Anbu, to compress months of preparation into weeks. Exactly. And now, it will allow us to work on your abilities with less concern about time constraints. Kakashi set down his pack and surveyed the chamber. "We'll start with a proper assessment of your depth perception abilities." From his pack, Kakashi withdrew several sealed containers. He opened the first, revealing a small, withered plant. "This orchid died 3 days ago," he explained, placing it on a stone pedestal in the center of the chamber. "I want you to focus on it and tell me what you see." Naruto approached cautiously. As he concentrated on the dead plant, his vision shifted, the normal visual spectrum falling away. Replaced by something more fundamental. The orchid's physical form became semi-transparent, revealing networks of energy that had once flowed through its cellular structure but now lay dormant. More striking were the fine lines crisscrossing the plant's form, not physical fractures, but something more conceptual, as though reality itself had drawn boundaries defining where life ended and death began. "I see lines," Naruto described, "like fracture points or seams. They cover the entire plant, but they're most concentrated at the stem and root junction. Can you interact with them?" Naruto cautiously extended his hand, stopping just short of touching the plant. "I think so, but I'm not sure what will happen. That's why we're here. Try tracing one of the smaller lines, gently." Taking a deep breath, Naruto touched his finger to one of the finer lines running through a single petal. The effect was immediate. The petal crumbled to dust, the particles hanging suspended for a moment before drifting downward in perfect synchronization. "Interesting," Kakashi noted. "Now try following a larger line." This time, Naruto traced a more prominent line that ran along the stem. The entire plant didn't just crumble, it seemed to transition out of physical existence altogether, leaving only a faint, dust-like residue that quickly dissipated. "It's like I accelerated its decay by centuries," Naruto observed. "But it didn't just decompose, it's like I helped it complete its transition from matter to energy." Kakashi opened another container, revealing a small lizard preserved in a stasis jutsu. "This one died just an hour ago. What do you see?" The difference was striking. Unlike the plant, the lizard still retained wisps of energy, not quite life force, but something transitional. The death lines were present but less defined, as though they hadn't fully settled into permanent patterns. "The lines are softer, less final," And there's still energy moving through it, like echoes of its life force. Quote, "Can you reverse it?" The question caught Naruto off guard. Reverse death? Is that even possible? Your heritage suggests it might be. The Shinigami Dosen. She just take life. She oversees transitions in both directions. Under very specific circumstances, that could include the transition back from death to life, at least for recently deceased beings. Naruto considered this disturbing possibility. I don't think I should try that. Even if I could, it feels like it would violate some fundamental principle. Kakashi nodded approvingly. Good, Zhu. Because you might have the ability doesn't mean you should use it. Death exists for a reason, just as time flows in a particular direction for a reason. Your challenge will be understanding when and how to make exceptions to those natural laws without disrupting the overall balance. For the remainder of that day, they worked methodically through various exercises designed to help Naruto understand and control his death perception abilities. By sunset, he could consistently identify death lines in objects and organic matter, trace them with varying degrees of effect, and, most importantly, suppress the ability when it wasn't needed. As they prepared a simple meal over a small fire in one of the side chambers, Naruto broached a subject that had been troubling him. Kakashi-sensei, when I'm in the village, I can hear them, the dead. Not clearly, not all the time, but they're there. Especially in places where many people have died. Kakashi was silent for a long moment, turning to SK. Ewer of meat over the flames with methodical precision. What did they say? Fragments mostly. Final thoughts. Regrets. Sometimes messages for people they left behind. Naruto stared into the fire. During the Kyuubi attack, hundreds died near the academy. When I walk past that area now, the voices become almost deafening. Can you communicate with them? Respond. I don't think so. It's more like echoes. Impressions left behind rather than conscious entities. Naruto hesitated. Except, there's one voice that seems different. Clearer. More present. It's been following me since the awakening. But I can never quite make out what it's saying or who it belongs to. Kakashi's expression remained neutral, but something in his posture changed, a subtle tension that Naruto wouldn't have noticed before his enhanced perception. Describe it. Female. Young, I think. There's a sense of urgency to it. Like she's trying to warn me about something. Have you told anyone else about this? No. Should I? Kakashi carefully removed the skewers from the fire, handing one to Naruto. Not yet. Tomorrow we'll focus on refining your ability to hear these voices. If this particular one is trying to communicate specifically with you, there may be a reason. They ate in comfortable silence, the crackling fire and distant drip of water from deeper in the cave system the only sounds. After the meal, Kakashi produced a small scroll from his vest. Hinata asked me to give you this, he said, offering the scroll to Naruto. She said it contains information about Children of Divine Unions from the Hyuga archives. Naruto accepted the scroll, surprised. She didn't have to. I believe her exact words were, his heritage is awakening faster than even the ancient texts predicted. This knowledge rightfully belongs to him, not locked away in our vaults. A small smile tugged at Naruto's lips. That doesn't sound like the Hinata I know. Perhaps you don't know her as well as you thought. Kakashi suggested mildly. The manifestation of your divine essence seems to have catalyzed changes in her as well, or perhaps revealed aspects of her nature that were always present but dormant. Naruto carefully unrolled the scroll, noting the unusual material, not paper or parchment, but something with a subtle luminescence that reminded him of the moon's glow. Text was written in an archaic form of kanji that should have been indecipherable to him, yet he found he could read it effortlessly. This is incredible, he murmured as he scanned the contents. It's a historical record of divine human unions throughout history, going back thousands of years. Anything relevant to your situation? Yes, but it's strange. According to this, unions between gods and humans were once common, producing children with extraordinary abilities. But about 1,000 years ago, something called the Celestial Edict forbade such unions, declaring them disruptive to the balance between realms. Yet your parents defied this edict. Apparently. Naruto continued reading, his expression growing increasingly troubled. It says here that children of particularly powerful divine combinations, especially those involving fundamental cosmic forces, often experience something called resonance awakening. Meaning, their awakening triggers or accelerate dormant divine heritage in others nearby who have compatible divine bloodlines, however diluted. He looked up from the scroll. Hinata's recent changes, her abilities at the shrine, they might be happening because of me. And potentially others as well, Kakashi mused. The Hyuga aren't the only clan in the shinobi world with rumors of divine ancestry. Naruto continued reading, occasionally acting surprised sounds or muttering to himself. Finally, he rolled the scroll closed, his expression thoughtful. According to this, there are others like me, children of divine unions who were hidden among humans for protection. The scroll mentions specific bloodlines to watch for. Those who command the ocean depths, those who dance with lightning's fury, those who bend winter to their will, those who walk between shadow and flame. Cryptic, Kakashi remarked. Deliberately so, I imagine, to protect their identities. There's something else, Naruto added. A prophecy or prediction about a time when these hidden divine descendants would awaken simultaneously, creating something called the convergence, a rebalancing of power between the mortal and divine realms. Which explains why these hunters and sentinels are so determined to stop you, and why others might be equally determined to help me. Naruto carefully rewound the scroll. I need to thank Hinata personally for this. It answers questions I didn't even know to ask. Kakashi nodded. We'll return to the village in a few days. For now, get some rest. Tomorrow's training will be even more intensive. Naruto settled into his bedroll. But sleep proved elusive. His mind raced with implications from the scroll's revelations, connecting pieces of a cosmic puzzle he was only beginning to comprehend. When he finally drifted off, his dreams were vivid and strange, not the usual chaos of normal dreaming, but something more structured, more deliberate. He found himself standing in a vast, twilight realm where the boundaries between existence and non-existence blurred. The ground beneath his feet appeared solid yet insubstantial, like compressed shadow given temporary form. The sky above, if it could be called a sky, shifted between deep indigo and absolute black, occasionally illuminated by distant lights that might have been stars or might have been something else entirely. Where am I? He wondered aloud. The threshold, answered a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. The domain between life and death, time and eternity, being and non-being. From the shifting darkness, emerged a figure Naruto recognized from his previous vision, Shinigami, the goddess of death, his mother. In this realm, her appearance was more defined, less a void in reality and more a concentrated presence of infinite depth. Her form was vaguely feminine but predominantly humanoid, composed of darkness that somehow radiated its own inner light. Mother, Naruto acknowledged, the word still feeling strange on his tongue. My child. Her voice carried warmth that defied her ominous appearance. You begin to grasp your heritage. I'm trying to understand, but there's so much I don't know. Why didn't you or my father ever contact me before now? The seals placed upon your divine essence prevented it. They were necessary. Without them, your human form could not have contained your power during childhood. She moved closer, the darkness of her form rippling like liquid shadow. Even now, you access only a fraction of your true potential. These abilities, controlling time, perceiving death, they're just the beginning. Indeed, as your divine essence integrates fully with your human consciousness, greater aspects will awaken. She gestured, and the twilight realm around them shifted, revealing glimpses of other places, other times. You will learn to move between moments as easily as others step between rooms. You will understand the language of souls, not mere echoes, but the true voice of those who have passed beyond the veil. And is that a good thing? Should I even have these powers? Shinigami's form seemed to smile, though she had no visible mouth. Such a human question. Power simply is, child. Its nature, beneficial or destructive, depends entirely on how it is wielded and to what purpose. The scroll Hinata gave me mentioned others like me, and something called the convergence. What does that mean? The realm around them darkened slightly, as though responding to the goddess's shifting mood. Long ago, the divine and mortal realms existed in closer harmony. Gods walked among humans, sometimes producing children of mixed heritage. These descendants carried divine power tempered by human emotion and perspective, a combination that proved uniquely suited to maintaining balance between worlds. What happened? Fear. Certain elder deities grew concerned about the unpredictable nature of these divine-human hybrids. They enacted the celestial edict, forbidding further unions and hunting down many existing descendants. Her form flickered with what might have been anger or sorrow. But some of us disagreed with this purge. We protected those we could, hiding them among human populations, diluting their divine signatures to escape detection. Including me. You were different. The union between time and death, between your father and myself, was unprecedented. The power within you represented something the elder gods feared more than any previous hybrid, the potential to rewrite the fundamental laws that separated the realms. Is that why these hunters and sentinels are after me? They serve the Celestial Council, enforcing the edict across worlds and time streams. Your awakening has triggered what the ancient Prophets called the convergence, a cascade of divine awakenings among those with compatible bloodlines who have remained hidden for generations. So I'm causing others to awaken too. Like Hinata, her lunar heritage was always present, merely dormant. Your awakening acts as a catalyst, not a cause. Shinigami's form shifted closer, her presence enveloping Naruto like a cool mist. But yes, others will follow. Some are already stirring, feeling the resonance of your emergence. The scroll mentioned specific bloodlines: ocean, lightning, winter, and shadow flame. Who are they? That, my child, you must discover for yourself. The connections will form naturally, drawing you together as the convergence progresses. The Twilight Realm began to waver, its edges growing indistinct. Shinigami's form similarly started to fade. Our time grows short, she said. The threshold can only sustain your presence briefly while your awakening remains incomplete. Wait, I still have so many questions. About you and my father. How did you meet? How did I come to be born? The goddess's form stabilized momentarily, her essence radiating what felt like affectionate amusement. Another time, perhaps, but I will grant you this, a glimpse of that first meeting. The Twilight Realm dissolved, replaced by a scene that unfolded like a living memory around Naruto. He saw a mountain peak bathed in moonlight, where reality seemed particularly thin. A massive celestial body, not the moon, but something far larger and more ancient, dominated the sky above. Upon this peak stood a figure composed of constellations and cosmic energy, whom Naruto recognized as Chronos, god of time. He appeared to be conducting some complex ritual involving the alignment of stellar bodies, his movements creating ripples in reality itself. From the mountain's shadow emerged Shinigami, then appearing more solid and defined than in Naruto's previous encounters with her. She observed the time god's work with obvious interest. You disturb the natural flow of transitions, Time Weaver, she said, her voice carrying both challenge and curiosity. Chronos turned, surprise evident in his celestial features. Death herself comes to question my work. Unprecedented. These souls you delay, they belong in my domain. Their time has ended. Has it? Chronos gestured to the cosmic display above them. Time is rarely as linear as other entities perceive it. I merely adjust the flow occasionally, when potential demands it. Potential. These particular mortals, their impact remains unfinished. The tapestry of causality shows threads left dangling that should be woven to completion. Shinigami moved closer, examining the cosmic pattern Chronos had created. Fascinating. You see patterns beyond the individual transition points. Just as you perceive more than the mere cessation of life, I imagine. Their conversation continued, the initial confrontation evolving into mutual respect and then something deeper, a recognition of complementary perspectives that neither had encountered before. Time and death, typically seen as opposing forces, revealed themselves as different expressions of the same cosmic principle, transition from one state to another. The vision faded, leaving Naruto once more in the Twilight Realm with the rapidly dissipating presence of his divine mother. That was just the beginning, Shinigami told him. A relationship that developed over centuries by mortal reckoning, culminating in your creation, an embodiment of our unified essence. They seemed so different from how I imagined gods would be. Quote, Divine beings are not the simple archetypes humans often depict. We contain multitudes, complexities, even contradictions, much like humans, but on a cosmic scale. Her form had diminished to little more than a concentrated shadow. Remember this, my son. Your greatest strength lies not in your divine power, but in your human heart. It is what allows you to wield cosmic forces with compassion and purpose. Will I see you again? When you learn to navigate the threshold willingly, you may call upon me. Until then, trust in those whose essence resonates with your own. The convergence brings not just power, but connection. With those final words, her presence vanished completely, and the Twilight Realm dissolved around Naruto. He awakened with a start, finding himself back in the training cavern. Pale light filtered through crystal formations in the ceiling, indicating dawn had arrived. Kakashi was already awake, observing him with thoughtful attention. Interesting dreams? The Jonin inquired mildly. Not dreams, Naruto replied, sitting up. I think I just visited the realm between life and death and had a conversation with my mother. To Kakashi's credit, he merely nodded as though this were perfectly reasonable. Learn anything useful? Naruto related the conversation, including the information about the convergence and the vision of his divine parents' first meeting. When he finished, Kakashi remained silent for several moments, processing the implications. The Hyuga scroll mentioned 4 specific bloodlines that would awaken during this convergence. He finally said, Ocean, Lightning, Winter, and Shadow Flame. If we're looking for potential allies with divine heritage, those descriptions might help narrow our search. Hinata is obviously connected to the moon, not any of those elements, Naruto pointed out. Which suggests there are more divine bloodlines than just the 4 mentioned specifically. Kakashi stood, stretching casually. Something to consider later. For now, we should focus on your training. If these divine hunters are targeting you, you'll need every advantage your heritage provides. Hide's training proved even more intense than the previous one. They focused primarily on refining Naruto's ability to hear and interpret the voices of the dead, using specialized sealing techniques Kakashi had brought with them. By concentrating on specific frequencies of spectral energy, Naruto learned to filter the cacophony of death echoes into more coherent patterns. The key, Kakashi explained as they worked, is intention. Just as with your temporal abilities, your focus determines the outcome. Don't try to hear everything at once. Target specific voices or types of information. By midday, Naruto could successfully isolate individual death echoes from the general background noise. Most were fragmentary, disconnected emotions or final thoughts rather than coherent messages. But occasionally, he encountered stronger impressions, typically from those who had died with powerful unresolved attachments to the living world. There's something strange about some of these echoes, he noted during a brief rest period. Most fade as I focus on them, like they're dissipating under attention. But others actually intensify, becoming more defined. Those may be spirits that haven't fully transitioned to the pure death realm, Kakashi suggested. Souls with unfinished business are strong emotional anchors to this world. Like the female voice I mentioned, the one that's been following me. Precisely. Have you been able to hear it more clearly today? Naruto closed his eyes, extending his death perception outward in a wide sphere around them. The background murmur of specter. Echoes washed over him like distant surf, but he focused past them, searching for the distinctive resonance of the persistent voice. There, at the edge of his perception range. Unlike the other echoes, this presence seemed to retreat when directly approached, maintaining a consistent distance. She's here, he said, eyes still closed. But she's wary, like she wants to communicate but doesn't fully trust me. Can you send a message back? Let her know you're aware of her presence. Naruto hadn't considered this possibility. He focused his intention, projecting his consciousness toward the elusive presence. I can hear you. You've been following me. Why? For several heartbeats, nothing happened. Then, startlingly clear, descendant of time and death. The celestial hunters deceived me. I died by their hand. But they promised me eternal peace. Instead, I remain tethered, neither living nor fully transitioned. Who are you? Naruto asked. I was Shizuka of the Shadow Blade clan. We were sworn to hunt divine bloodlines, believing them abominations. I killed many. But when I discovered the truth, that we were being manipulated by the Celestial Council. I was eliminated by my own people. Asterisk. What truth? Asterisk. That divine bloodlines are necessary for balance. That the convergence isn't a threat to be prevented, but a correction long overdue. The Council fears loss of control, not cosmic catastrophe. Asterisk. The presence, Shizuka, seemed to strengthen as she communicated, her spiritual form becoming more defined in Naruto's perception. He could now make out a vague humanoid ape composed of denser spiritual energy than the typical death echoes. How long have you been following me? He asked. Since your awakening began. The distortion it created in the death realm allowed me to locate you. I've been trying to warn you about. The connection suddenly severed, Shizuka's presence vanishing completely from Naruto's perception. His eyes snapped open to find Kakashi in a defensive stance, kunai drawn and attention focused on a point near the cavern entrance. We have company, the Jonin said quietly. A figure stood silhouetted against the cave opening, female, tall and lithe. Dressed in form-fitting black attire with numerous weapons visible at her belt and strapped to her limbs. Most distinctive was her mask, a sleek, featureless gray surface with only narrow E slits providing any break in its smooth contour. Impressive shielding, the woman commented, her voice slightly muffled behind the mask. It took considerable effort to locate this facility, even with my specialized tracking methods. Who are you? Kakashi demanded, not relaxing his stance. My name is irrelevant. I represent the Order of the Shadow Blade, those tasked with maintaining balance between divine and mortal realms. She turned her masked face toward Naruto. I've come to assess the Awakened One. Assessment sounds an awful lot like preparation for assassination. In my experience, Kakashi replied dryly. The woman made a dismissive gesture. If elimination were my goal, I wouldn't announce my presence. The Order's purpose is more nuanced than simple extermination. Naruto stepped forward, ignoring Kakashi's subtle warning gesture. Your name is Shizuka, isn't it? The woman went perfectly still, tension visibly rippling through her posture. How could you possibly know that? Because I just spoke with someone by that name. Someone who claimed the Shadow Blade clan killed her for discovering they were being manipulated by the Celestial Council. A sharp, most inaudible intake of breath came from behind the mask. Impossible. Shizuka died 3 years ago. I was assigned to replace her. Yet you use her name, Naruto observed. Why? It is traditional. Each operative inherits the designation of their predecessor. Her head tilted slightly. You claim to have spoken with her spirit. Yes. She was trying to warn me about something when you arrived, and her presence vanished. The masked woman moved further into the cavern, her movements fluid and predatory. The dead don't speak to the living. Not even divine hybrids possess such ability. The son of Shinigami might. Kakashi suggested, still maintaining his defensive position. This information clearly surprised the assassin. She stopped her advance, reassessing the situation. Death Goddess and Chronos. Naruto supplied. God of Time. Impossible, she breathed. That combination is forbidden by the highest laws. The Celestial Edict explicitly. She cut herself off, her posture shifting subtly. This changes the assessment parameters significantly. Why don't you remove your mask? Naruto suggested. Seems only fair if you're here to assess me that I should be able to see who I'm talking to. After a moment's hesitation, the woman reached up and removed her mask. The face revealed was striking. Sharp features framed by short, silver-white hair, with eyes of such a pale blue they appeared almost colorless. A thin scar ran from her left temple to the corner of her mouth, the only imperfection in otherwise flawless features. Satisfied? She asked, her tone mildly sarcastic. Partially, Naruto replied. Now explain what you mean by assessment. The Order monitors divine bloodlines and their activities. When an awakening occurs, especially one as powerful as yours, we determine whether it represents a threat to cosmic balance. And if you decide it does. Her smile was thin and without warmth. Then we take appropriate action. Like you did with the previous Shizuka. Kakashi interjected. The assassin's eyes narrowed fractionally. Shizuka's elimination was controversial within the Order. She violated protocols, made unauthorized contact with subjects under assessment. She discovered you were being lied to, Naruto said flatly. That the convergence isn't a threat, but a necessary rebalancing that the Celestial Council fears because it diminishes their control. The woman's expression didn't change, but Naruto, with his enhanced perception, noticed the slight acceleration in her heartbeat, the subtle shift in her breathing pattern. "You've spoken with more than just a dead assassin's spirit," she observed. "You've had contact with higher entities." "My mother paid me a visit," Naruto confirmed. "She had some interesting things to say about the council and their motivations." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across the assassin's features. Divine beings are notoriously self-serving in their interpretations of cosmic law. The Shinigami would naturally support her offspring's awakening, regardless of consequences. "Then verify it yourself," Naruto challenged. "You're here to assess me, so assess. Okay, beyond what you've been told by your order and see what's actually happening." The assassin considered this, then reached for a weapon unlike any Naruto had seen before, a short rod of black metal. Inscribed with complex symbols that glowed faintly blue when she activated it with a pulse of chakra. "This is an essence resonator," she explained. "It allows me to detect and analyze divine energy. Signatures without interference or deception." Kakashi moved slightly, positioning himself to intervene if necessary. "And how do we know it doesn't have other functions? Like, say, suppression or extraction?" "You don't," she acknowledged bluntly. "But if I wanted to attack, I have far more effective tools for that purpose." She directed her attention to Naruto. "This will be uncomfortable. Divine essence naturally resists examination." "Do it," Naruto agreed, earning a sharp look from Kakashi. The assassin pointed the rod toward Naruto and activated it fully. The symbols along its length flared brilliant blue, and a beam of similar colored light extended toward him, enveloping his form in a translucent aura. The sensation was indeed uncomfortable, like someone probing directly into his spiritual core, examining the most fundamental aspects of his being. Naruto gritted his teeth but remained still, allowing the assessment to proceed. For nearly a full minute, the assassin studied whatever information the device was providing her, her expression growing increasingly troubled. Finally, she deactivated the rod, the blue light fading instantly. "Well," Kakashi prompted when she remained silent. "This is unexpected," she finally said, carefully returning the device to her belt. "His divine signature is indeed that of time and death combined, but there's something else. A stabilizing element I've never encountered before. The Nine Tails chakra has somehow integrated with his divine essence, creating a harmonized trinity rather than the chaotic conflict our teachings predicted. Meaning his awakening isn't causing the cosmic instability the council claimed was inevitable with such a combination." Her pale eyes studied Naruto with newfound interest. "In fact, the resonance patterns suggest the opposite. His emergence is actually correcting existing distortions in the divine mortal boundary. Just as Shizuka discovered," Naruto noted. "Before your order killed her for it." The assassin's jaw tightened slightly. "If what you say is true, if she really did discover manipulation by the council, it changes everything about our purpose." "She's still here," Naruto told her. "Not fully transitioned to the death realm. If you remove whatever is blocking my connection to her, I can bring her forward again." Suspicion flashed across the woman's features. "What makes you think I'm blocking anything?" "Because her presence vanished the moment you arrived. Something about you, or something you're carrying, disrupts spiritual communication." After a moment's consideration, the assassin reached into a concealed pocket and withdrew a small, polished stone that glowed with a faint green light. "Spectral dampening stone. Standard equipment for Shadow Blade operatives to prevent interference from death echoes during assessments." She placed the stone on the ground several meters away. Almost immediately, Naruto sensed Shizuka's spiritual presence returning, stronger than before and distinctly agitated. "She cannot be trusted." The spirit's voice rang in Naruto's mind. "She serves the executioner faction within the order. Your predecessor seems to have a low opinion of you." Naruto relayed, watching the living assassin's reaction carefully. A flash of genuine surprise crossed her features. "You really can hear her?" It wasn't a question. "What else does she say?" "Tell her I know about Operation Celestial Purge. Tell her I found the sealed archives beneath Axis Temple. Tell her the Grand Master has been compromised for over a century." Naruto repeated these messages verbatim, watching as the color drained from the assassin's face with each statement. When he finished, she stood perfectly still, her expression locked in a mask of controlled shock. Those are verification phrases, she finally explained. Information known only to top-level operatives and the specific predecessors who trained them. Information I never shared with anyone. Her voice had lost its confident edge. You're actually communicating with Shizuka's spirit. She has more to say, Naruto told her. Are you willing to listen? The assassin, the living Shizuka, hesitated only briefly before nodding. Yes, if what she knows could validate my own growing doubts about our mission. For the next hour, Naruto served as a conduit between the dead Shizuka and her successor. Relaying information about the Order's true history, the manipulation by the Celestial Council, and the evidence hidden in various sacred sites across the continent. The living assassin occasionally asked specific questions, which the spirit answered with precise details that clearly confirmed her authentic identity. Kakashi observed silently, only occasionally adjusting his position to maintain optimal defensive coverage of the cavern. His visible eye revealed nothing of his thoughts, but the subtle tension in his posture suggested he remained unconvinced of the assassin's trustworthiness. Finally, the spirit's presence began to fade, her energy apparently depleted by the extended communication. Tell her to seek the Black Archive beneath Mooncliff Sanctuary. The spirit's voice came, growing fainter. The unaltered prophecy tablets are there. And warn the Time-Death Child, the Hunter Commander approaches. 3 days hence, at the Mountain of 9 Waterfalls. With that, the presence vanished completely, this time not due to any external interference but simple spiritual exhaustion. She's gone, Naruto informed them. Her energy couldn't sustain the connection any longer. The living Shizuka stood motionless for several moments, processing everything she had learned. Finally, she retrieved her mask but did not replace it over her face. I need to verify what she's told me, she said, her tone businesslike but lacking its earlier edge. If her information about the Black Archive is accurate, you believe her, then? Kakashi asked, speaking for the first time since the spiritual communication began. She knew things no one could possibly know unless they were truly Shizuka. The assassin's pale eyes fixed on Naruto. And his abilities are not what we were led to believe. The Order taught us that time-death combination offspring would bring chaos, unraveling reality itself. But his essence signature shows stability, even harmonization. What will you tell your superiors? Naruto asked. Nothing, for now. Her expression hardened with resolve. I need to confirm the truth independently before deciding my next course of action. And what about your assessment of me? Naruto pressed. Am I a threat to cosmic balance that needs elimination? For the first time, a genuine smile, small but perceptible, curved the assassin's lips. My assessment is incomplete. I'll need to observe you further before reaching a final conclusion. Is that your way of saying you'll be stalking me from the shadows for the foreseeable future? Naruto asked dryly. Think of it as having an informed observer at a discreet distance. She replaced her mask, her voice once again taking on its slightly muffled quality. I suspect we'll meet again soon, son of time and death. Especially if your spirit friend's warning about the Hunter Commander proves accurate. 3 days at the Mountain of 9 Waterfalls, Naruto repeated. Any idea what that means? Takigakure, Kakashi supplied. The village hidden in the waterfalls. Its central mountain features 9 sacred cascades. The assassin nodded. The Hunter Commander is the Celestial Council's primary enforcer, far more dangerous than the Moon Hunters or Temporal Sentinels you've encountered so far. If he's coming personally, she let the implication hang in the air. Then I need to be ready, Naruto finished. You need to be elsewhere, she countered. Even with your awakening abilities, you're not prepared to face someone who has hunted a ND eliminated divine hybrids for millennia. Running isn't my style, neither is dying pointlessly. The assassin moved toward the cavern entrance. Consider carefully, Naruto Uzumaki. The convergence needs you alive more than it needs you brave. With those parting words, she disappeared into the tunnel leading outside, her presence vanishing so completely that even Naruto's enhanced senses couldn't track her departure. Well, Kakashi said after a moment of silence, that was informative. You think she was telling the truth about reassessing her mission? It's possible. Or she could be playing a longer game, gathering more information before reporting back to her order. Kakashi retrieved the spectral dampening stone the assassin had left behind. Either way, we need to adjust our plans. If this hunter commander is as dangerous as she suggests, I'm not hiding, Naruto stated firmly. No one's suggesting you should. But facing an ancient divine hunter without preparation would be foolish. Kakashi pocketed the stone and turned to face his student directly. We have 3 days to enhance your control over your abilities and develop countermeasures against divine hunting techniques. And then we meet this hunter commander, but on our terms, not his. They spent the remainder of the day intensifying Naruto's training, focusing particularly on the integration of his temporal and death-related abilities. By combining aspects of both inheritances, he discovered he could create effects neither could produce independently, slowing the death process in living tissue, accelerating temporal healing, even briefly suspending a subject between states of existence. As night fell, Naruto found himself exhausted but exhilarated. His divine powers were becoming less foreign, more intuitive, extensions of himself rather than alien abilities to be feared or restrained. You've made remarkable progress, Kakashi observed as they prepared their evening meal. Far faster than I anticipated. It feels less like learning something new and more like remembering something I always knew, Naruto explained, watching the dancing flames of their small fire. Like these abilities were always part of me, just waiting for recognition. A fitting description for divine heritage awakening, a new voice commented from the shadows beyond the firelight. Both Naruto and Kakashi spun toward the sound, instantly alert. From the darkness emerged Hinata, her Byakugan active, giving her eyes an ethereal glow in the dim light. Hinata, Naruto exclaimed, how did you find us? How did you get past the temporal distortion field? The Byakugan sees through more than just physical barriers, she replied, stepping fully into the firelight. As for the temporal distortion, lunar energy naturally stabilizes time fluctuations. It's why the moon's orbit is so critical for maintaining Earth's temporal rhythm. Naruto noted that something about her had changed since their last meeting at the Hyuga shrine. She carried herself with newfound confidence, her movements fluid and purposeful. More notably, her chakra signature had evolved, still recognizably Hinata, but now interwoven with silvery lunar energy that pulsed in gentle waves around her core. You shouldn't have come alone, Kakashi admonished, though his tone suggested he wasn't entirely surprised by her appearance. The journey here is dangerous, especially with increased divine activity targeting Naruto. I didn't come alone, Hinata corrected. She made a small gesture, and to addition. Figures emerged from the shadows, branch family Hyuga members, both Jonin level from their chakra signatures. Lady Tsunade sent us, one explained with a respectful bow to Kakashi. The situation in Konoha has evolved since your departure. Evolved how? Naruto asked, tension creeping into his voice. Hinata met his gaze directly. More divine manifestations, strange weather patterns, expected chakra fluctuations in certain individuals. Her expression softened slightly, and I've been having dreams, visions, about ancient lunar temples and forgotten ceremonies. My father believes my own divine heritage is awakening in response to yours. The resonance effect, Naruto murmured, recalling the information from the scroll she had sent. Yes, and I'm not the only one affected. Hinata reached into her pack and withdrew another scroll, this one sealed with the Hokage's personal mark. Intelligence reports from our allies indicate similar phenomena occurring in other nations. In Kurigakure, the Mizukage has been experiencing unusual control over water far beyond normal chakra manipulation. In Kumogakure, lightning storms have been concentrating around a specific kunoichi from their elite forces. Ocean depths and lightning's fury, Kakashi noted. 2 of the 4 bloodlines mentioned in the prophecy. There's more, Hinata continued. The land of snow has reported Sual ice formations appearing spontaneously around their princess. And there are rumors from the land of demons about their priestess exhibiting new abilities related to shadow manipulation and sacred flame. Winter's will and shadow flame, Naruto completed the quartet. The convergence is happening, just as the scroll predicted. Which is why we need to return to Konoha immediately, Hinata urged. Lady Tsunade is coordinating with our allies to bring these awakening individuals together. If the prophecies are accurate, your combined presence will accelerate and stabilize the divine awakenings. creating a unified defense against whatever the Celestial Council intends. Naruto exchanged a glance with Kakashi. But the hunter commander is coming to Tokigakure in 3 days. If he's as dangerous as the assassin suggested. A diversion, Kakashi surmised. Or a trap designed to separate you from potential allies. Either way, our priority must be consolidating our position, Hinata insisted. Together, your divine resonances will strengthen each other. Divided, you're vulnerable. Naruto considered this, weighing the tactical wisdom against his instinctive reluctance to retreat from a challenge. Finally, he nodded. You're right. The smart move is to regroup in Konoha before facing any other divine hunters. We'll leave at first light, Kakashi decided. Traveling Tog, ether will provide better security than attempting a night journey through unfamiliar terrain. As they made preparations for an early departure, Naruto found a moment to speak privately with Hinata near the edge of the firelight. Thank you for the scroll, he said. It helped me understand a lot about what's happening to me. It was your right to know, she replied simply. The Hyuga have guarded that knowledge for generations, waiting for the convergence to begin. And now it's happening, with both of us involved. He studied her changed chakra signature with his enhanced perception. Your lunar heritage, how is it manifesting for you? A small smile touched her lips. In ways I'm still discovering. Enhanced Byakugan abilities, lunar chakra manipulation, dreams that reveal ancient knowledge. She hesitated, then added softly, and a greater awareness of connections between compatible divine essences. Connections. Her pale eyes met his directly, a blush coloring her cheeks despite her newfound confidence. The ancient texts describe how divine bloodlines naturally resonate with complementary types. Time and lunar energy have always been closely linked. The moon measures time, regulates cycles, influences transitions. So our heritages are compatible. Extremely so. The blush deepened slightly. The text suggests such compatibility often manifests as personal attraction, a natural drawing together of complementary energies. Naruto processed this information, suddenly viewing their long history in a new light. Your feelings for me, all these years, they weren't just. They were genuine, she assured him quickly. But perhaps, influenced by resonances neither of us fully understood until now. An unexpected warmth spread through Naruto's chest. I've always valued your friendship, your support. But with everything changing so quickly, I haven't had time to really think about. You don't need to say anything now, Hinata told him, her voice gentle but no longer carrying its former shyness. The convergence will bring many revelations and changes for all involved. We have time. Her choice of words, a tacit acknowledgement of his temporal heritage, brought a smile to his lips. Time is something I apparently have in abundance. And I have patience in equal measure, she replied with quiet humor. A lunar virtue. There can be. Our session was interrupted by Kakashi announcing the watch schedule for the night. As they rejoined the others, Naruto found himself contemplating the expanding circle of allies gathering around him, some drawn by loyalty, others by duty. And now some by divine resonance. The convergence was indeed beginning, bringing together bloodlines separated for generations by divine decree. And whatever the Celestial Council feared about their union, Naruto was increasingly certain that their combined awakening represented not chaos, but a long overdue rebalancing of power between realms. As he settled into his bedroll, his last conscious thought was a quiet determination. Whatever came next, hunter commanders, divine politics, or further awakenings, he would face it not alone, but surrounded by those whose essence harmonized with his own. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, The Hands of Fate. Dawn painted Konoha in amber and gold as Naruto stood atop the Hokage Tower, eyes closed, feeling the first rays of sunlight warming his face. The village below stirred to life. Shopkeepers raising shutters, early rising shinobi traversing rooftops, children reluctantly preparing for the academy. To ordinary senses, it appeared a morning like any other. But to Naruto's enhanced perception, each moment unfolded in breathtaking complexity. He could sense the overlapping rhythms of thousands of heartbeats, each following its unique temporal signature. He perceived the subtle energy shifts as plants turned toward the rising sun, the crystalline geometry of dew evaporating from leaves, even the gradual metamorphose of insects hidden within bark and soil. Time itself appeared as a vast, flowing tapestry, not the rigid linear progression he had always taken for granted, but a malleable medium with currents, eddies, and occasional stillnesses. Impressive view, isn't it? Tsunade's voice came from behind him. Though I suspect you're seeing something entirely different from what I am. Naruto opened his eyes, the world resuming its more conventional appearance as he turned to face the Hokage. It's beautiful, he admitted. Overwhelming sometimes, but beautiful. Tsunade joined him at the railing, her amber eyes scanning the village with the practiced vigilance of its leader. The council meeting will begin shortly. Are you prepared to tell a room full of suspicious politicians and clan heads that I'm the son of divine entities who may have inadvertently triggered a cosmic convergence that could reshape reality? He gave her a lopsided smile. Sure, no problem. Your sarcasm has improved since your awakening. Tsunade observed dryly. Must be the divine influence. Actually, I think it's Kurama's influence. He's become much more present since all this began. Tsunade's expression turned serious. That's something we should discuss. The Nine Tails chakra signature has been fluctuating in unusual patterns. Our sensor nin report it's somehow harmonizing with your divine essence rather than fighting against it. That's unprecedented. It's more than harmonizing, Naruto replied, his voice lowering. Kurama is changing, becoming something different. Different how? Before Naruto could answer, the door to the rooftop opened, revealing Shizune. Lady Tsunade, the council is assembled. They're waiting for you both. Tsunade nodded, then fixed Naruto with a penetrating look. We'll continue this discussion later. For now, remember what we discussed. Reveal only what's necessary. The full extent of your abilities remains classified. Understood. As they descended into the tower, Naruto mentally prepared himself. The past week since returning from the training cavern had been a whirlwind of activity, intensive training sessions with specialized instructors, detailed debriefings about his divine encounters, and careful documentation of his evolving abilities. Throughout it all, Tsunade had maintained an ironclad information lockdown, restricting knowledge of his true heritage to a select few. Today would change that. With divine hunters targeting Konoha and other awakening bloodlines requiring protection, secrecy was becoming both impractical and potentially dangerous. The council chamber fell silent as Naruto entered behind Tsunade. All of Konoha's clan heads were present, along with civilian representatives and key shinobi commanders. Their expressions ranged from open curiosity to poorly concealed apprehension. Hiashi Hyuga sat with perfect posture, his face impassive though his eyes tracked Naruto with particular attention. Beside him sat Hinata, her presence unusual for such meetings, but clearly deliberate given recent developments. She offered Naruto a small, encouraging smile. Let's dispense with the formalities, Tsunade began once they were seated. Most of you have heard rumors about unusual events surrounding Naruto Uzumaki. Today we will address those rumors directly and establish Konoha's official position regarding matters of divine significance. A murmur passed through the assembled council members. Divine significance. Kaharu Udatane, one of the village elders, repeated skeptically. Surely you're not suggesting we entertain mythological explanations for what are clearly unusual chakra phenomena. I'm suggesting nothing, Tsunade replied evenly. I'm stating facts, which Naruto himself will now present. All eyes turned to him. Naruto rose slowly, conscious of the weight of their collective attention. For a brief moment, he felt a familiar anxiety, the orphan child desperate for acknowledgement but fearing rejection. Then he felt a gentle pressure against his consciousness, Kurama, offering silent support from within. Thank you for hearing me out, he began, his voice steadier than he'd expected. What I'm about to tell you will challenge many of your assumptions about our world, but every word is true. For the next 20 minutes, Naruto explained his awakening, his divine parentage, and the broader implications of the convergence. He demonstrated small but unmistakable manipulations of time, aging a flower from bud to bloom in seconds, temporarily freezing a droplet of water in midair, showing how his movements could leave afterimages when he didn't consciously suppress the effect. He carefully omitted certain details, the full extent of his death perception abilities, his communication with spirits, and the more apocalyptic aspects of the Celestial Council's concerns. Some secrets were best kept among those directly involved. When he finished, the chamber remained silent for several heartbeats. Then, Predictably, the questions began. If what you claim is true, Danzo Shimura said, his single visible eye narrowing, then you represent both an unprecedented asset and a significant liability to Konoha's security. That's one perspective, Naruto acknowledged. I prefer to think of it as a responsibility, to Konoha and to those with similar awakening bloodlines who need protection. Protection from what, exactly? Asked Shikaku Nara, his sharp intellect already calculating implications. Divine hunters, Tsunade interjected. Entities that enforce separation between mortal and divine realms. They've already made several attempts to eliminate Naruto and will likely target others as their divine heritage awakens. Others. Inoichi Yamanaka leaned forward. You're suggesting there are more individuals with divine bloodlines. We have confirmed 4 cases outside Konoha, Tsunade replied. Intelligence suggests there may be more. The Hyuga clan has provided valuable historical context for these developments. Hiashi inclined his head in acknowledgement. The Byakugan's origins are tied to ancient lunar deities, he stated matter-of-factly. My daughter's recent evolution confirms what our clan archives have long suggested about dormant divine potential within certain bloodlines. All eyes shifted briefly to Hinata, who met their scrutiny with newfound composure. So we're to believe the Hyuga clan are descended from moon gods? Kaharu asked, skepticism evident in her tone. What's next? The Uchiha claimed as children of fire spirits. Your disbelief doesn't alter reality, Elder, Hiashi replied coolly. The evidence manifests regardless of our readiness to accept it. Evidence that conveniently elevates certain clans' status, Danzo observed. This isn't about status, Naruto cut in, an edge entering his voice. It's about survival. These divine hunters don't care about village politics or clan hierarchies. They awakening bloodlines as threats to be eliminated. All the more reason to consider the security implications carefully, Danzo countered. If Konoha openly harbors such individuals, we could be inviting attacks that endanger the entire population. And if we abandon them, we betray everything the will of fire represents, Tsunade responded sharply. Shikaku cleared his throat. Perhaps we should focus on practical considerations. Naruto, you mentioned a convergence. What exactly does this entail, and what timeline are we facing? Grateful for the return to substantive discussion, Naru. To explain the concept of divine resonance, how his awakening had triggered or accelerated similar processes in compatible bloodlines. He described the prophecies mentioned in the Hyuga scrolls and he pattern of awakening emerging across the 5 great nations. Based on what we know, he concluded, the convergence will continue accelerating. Those with the strongest divine heritage will awaken first, followed by those with more diluted bloodlines. The process could take months or years to complete, unless interrupted by these hunters, Shikaku noted. Exactly. Sume Inuzuka, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke. I'm less concerned with celestial politics than immediate threats. What capabilities do these divine hunters possess, and how do we defend against them? This launched a detailed tactical discussion about the different hunter types they'd encountered. Moon hunters, temporal sentinels, and the ominous hunter commander who had yet to make an appearance. Kakashi, who had been silently observing from a corner of the room, contributed observations from their previous encounters. As the discussion progressed, Naruto noticed Hinata watching him with an expression he couldn't quite interpret. When their eyes met, she didn't look away as she once might have. Instead, she held his gaze with quiet intensity, a subtle silver glow briefly illuminating her pupils. A visible manifestation of her awakening lunar heritage. The council meeting continued for another hour, eventually reaching a series of practical decisions. Konoha would offer sanctuary to individuals with awakening bloodlines. Establish a specialized response team for divine incursions, and send diplomatic envoys to allied nations most likely to harbor other convergence participants. As the meeting adjourned, Tsunade held Naruto back with a light touch on his shoulder. You did well, she said once the chamber had emptied except for them and Shizune. Better than I expected, honestly. Politics isn't exactly my strong suit. You'd be surprised. Sometimes authenticity accomplishes what calculation cannot. She gave him a considering look. Now, you were about to tell me about the 9 tails before we were interrupted. Naruto hesitated. It's complicated. Maybe it would be easier to show you. Show me. In my mindscape. I can bring you there briefly, if you're willing. Tsunade's eyebrows rose slightly. Another new ability. A combination of temporal manipulation and my connection to Kurama. I can temporarily synchronize our consciousness within a shared mental space. After a moment's consideration, Tsunade nodded. Very well. What do I need to do? Just maintain physical contact and allow the connection to form. Naruto extended his hand, which Tsunade clasped firmly. He closed his eyes, focusing on the unique temporal signature of his internal world where Kurama resided. With careful precision, he created a sympathetic resonance between Tsunade's consciousness and his own, drawing her perception into his mindscape. When he opened his eyes, they stood in a vast, cavernous space unlike the flooded prison that had once housed the Nine Tails. The cage and seal were gone, replaced by an expansive landscape that blended elements of forest, mountain, and cosmic void. Stars wheeled overhead in patterns that defied conventional astronomy, while iron trees with luminescent leaves stretched toward the impossible sky. This is not what I expected, Tsunade commented, turning slowly to take in the transformed environment. It's changed since my awakening, Naruto explained, reflecting the integration of my different aspects, human, Jinchuriki, and divine. A deep rumble shook the ground beneath their feet, and from behind a nearby mound, Toin Peak emerged Kurama, but not the purely vulpine entity Tsunade might have anticipated. The Nine Tails now appeared as a hybrid being, predominantly fox-like but with elements that seemed to shift between animal, human, and something altogether more cosmic. Nine Tails still flowed behind him, but they now resembled streams of galaxies more than physical appendages. Senju, Kurama acknowledged, massive head lowering to observe Tsunade directly. You've aged well for a mortal. Tsunade, to her credit, showed no fear. And you've changed considerably since Mito described you to me, Nine Tails. Kurama, the entity corrected. My name is Kurama, and yes, change was inevitable once the kit's divine essence awakened. Our energies have harmonized in unexpected ways. Harmonized how, exactly? Instead of answering directly, Kurama's form began to shimmer and contract, the massive fox-like shape condensing into something much smaller and more humanoid. Within moments, where the gigantic beast had stood now remained a figure that appeared almost human, a woman of striking beauty with fox-like features, crimson hair flowing like liquid flame down her back, nine tails of cosmic energy swirling behind her. Like this, the transformed Kurama stated, her voice now feminine but retaining its fundamental power. Golden eyes with slitted pupils regarded them both with ancient intelligence. My essence adapts to complement the kit's awakening nature. Tsunade's composure finally cracked, her jaw dropping slightly. You can take human form now. Not precisely human, Kurama corrected. More a concentrated manifestation of my essence in humanoid shape. It requires less energy to maintain within the kit's evolving internal landscape. And outside my mindscape? Naruto asked. The question revealing this development was still relatively new to him as well. Kurama's lips curved in a predatory smile that displayed elongated canines. Soon, as your divine nature strengthens, the barriers between your internal and external reality become more permeable. Eventually, I will be able to manifest physically while maintaining our connection. That's. Tsunade seemed at a loss for words. Unprecedented. Kurama finished for her. Like everything else about this situation, the convergence rewrites rules established millennia ago by entities who never anticipated a time-death hybrid with a Biju partner. Tsunade turned to Naruto. You're comfortable with this development? With her potentially gaining physical form? We've reached an understanding, Naruto replied, exchanging a glance with Kurama that suggested volumes of unspoken communication. Our relationship has evolved beyond jailer and prisoner. We're partners now. More than partners, Kurama interjected. Symbiotic entities whose combined strength exceeds the sum of our separate powers. Neither fully human nor divine nor Biju, but something new. Before Tsunade could respond, the mindscape began to waver slightly. Our connection is reaching its limit, Naruto explained. Maintaining this shared perception requires significant concentration. I've seen enough for now, Tsunade decided. End the connection. With a thought, Naruto dissolved the sympathetic resonance, returning their consciousness to the physical world of the council chamber. Tsunade released his hand slowly, her expression thoughtful. That certainly complicates matters, she finally said. In good ways or bad? Both, potentially. A humanoid nine-tails with conscious control and cooperative intent would be an incredible asset. But the political and security implications? She shook her head slightly. We'll need to proceed carefully. For now, this information remains classified at the highest level. Understood. One more thing, Tsunade added as they prepared to leave. Hinata Hyuga has requested to be assigned as your primary training partner for lunar resonance techniques. Given her raw PID advancement and compatible energy signature, I've approved this arrangement. Something in her tone made Naruto suspect there was more to this decision than purely tactical considerations. That's good, he replied, trying to sound neutral despite the unexpected warmth spreading through his chest at the news. Tsunade's knowing smile confirmed his suspicion. Training begins tomorrow at the Hyuga ancestral grounds. Apparently, there are certain techniques that can only be practiced at locations with specific lunar alignments. I'll be there. As he left the Hokage Tower, Naruto found D himself contemplating the accelerating changes in his life. Just weeks ago, he had been simply Naruto Uzumaki, ninja of Konoha, Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, aspiring future Hokage. Now he stood at the center of cosmic convergence. Son of primordial deities, catalyst for worldwide awakening of divine bloodlines. And Kurama, his lifelong burden turned reluctant ally, was transforming into something unprecedented. Neither purely Biju nor human but a unique synthesis reflecting their evolving bond. The familiar streets of Konoha suddenly seemed simultaneously more precious and more transient, on a small corner of a vast multiverse he was only beginning to comprehend. Citizens went about their daily routines, largely unaware that fundamental aspects of reality were shifting around them. Old Bow. Underease dissolving as divine and mortal realms moved toward reunion. Heavy thoughts for someone just leaving a council meeting, observed a voice from above. Naruto looked up to find Kakashi perched on a nearby rooftop. Orange book conspicuously absent for once. Just processing, Naruto replied as his teacher dropped down beside him. Processing is good, better than reacting impulsively, which used to be your default setting. I'm trying to be more deliberate. When your actions can potentially alter the flow of time itself, impulsivity becomes a luxury you can't afford. Kakashi's visible eye crinkled in what might have been approval. Wisdom from the formerly most unpredictable ninja in Konoha. The apocalypse must truly be upon us. Very funny. They walked in companionable silence for several blocks before Kakashi spoke again. The training partnership with Hinata, are you comfortable with that arrangement? Why wouldn't I be? Divine resonance between compatible bloodlines can be intense. The Hyuga records suggest time and lunar energies interact in particularly powerful ways. Meaning your training sessions will likely create strong emotional and energetic connections. Given Hinata's long-standing feelings for you, and your newly awakening awareness of divine compatibility. Naruto felt heat rising to his face. You're saying it could get complicated. I'm saying it already is complicated. But complexity isn't necessarily negative. Kakashi's tone softened slightly. Just be mindful that these divine resonances can amplify existing emotional connections in ways that might feel overwhelming. I'll keep that in mind. They parted ways at a crossroads, Kakashi heading toward the memorial stone while Naruto continued toward his apartment. As he walked, he found himself increasingly aware of subtle energy signatures throughout the village, the faint divine echoes in various clan compounds, stronger in some individuals than others. The Hyuga compound practically glowed with lunar resonance to his enhanced perception, while the Nara lands carried whispers of shadow manipulation that seemed slightly more than purely chakra-based techniques. Even the Inuzuka compound had an unusual energy pattern suggesting ancient connections to primal beast spirits. The convergence wasn't just affecting those with obvious divine TAGE, it was gradually awakening dormant connections throughout the shinobi world, revealing the forgotten truth that many of their most distinctive abilities had originated with divine human unions in the distant past. When Naruto reached his apartment, he found an unexpected visitor waiting outside his door, Shikamaru Nara, expression set in its usual blend of boredom and calculation. Took you long enough, the shadow user commented. Council meetings must be even more troublesome than I imagined. What brings you here? Naruto asked, unlocking his door and gesturing for Shikamaru to enter. The Nara heir waited until they were inside with the door closed before responding. Information that's too sensitive for official channels. My father asked me to brief you privately. Naruto Rai said an eyebrow as he cleared space at his small kitchen table. That sounds ominous. It might be. Shikamaru sat down, steepling his fingers in his characteristic thinking pose. Our intelligence network has detected unusual movement patterns from multiple potential threats, not just these divine hunters you've encountered, but also the Akatsuki and several previously unaligned groups. They're all converging on Konoha. Not exactly. They appear to be positioning themselves near locations with significant spiritual or historical importance, ancient temples, natural power nexuses, celestial alignment sites. The places where the barrier between mortal and divine realms is thinnest, Naruto realized. Shikamaru nodded. Exactly. Whatever this convergence is triggering, it's drawing at tension from every major player in the shinobi world and beyond. Some appear to be seeking to facilitate it, others to prevent it. And which category does your father think the Nara clan falls into? A flicker of surprise crossed Shikamaru's features. Direct, aren't you? My father didn't specify, but... He hesitated, then continued more quietly, our clan techniques have always been different. Shadow manipulation that exceeds normal chakra parameters. The ability to temporarily separate shadows from their physical sources. Divine heritage, Naruto suggested. Possibly. Our clan records are frustratingly vague about our origins. Lots of references to shadow walkers, and those who step between moments, but nothing explicitly confirming divine connection. Yet you're here, Harem classified intelligence directly with me rather than through official channels. Shikamaru's sharp gaze fixed on Naruto. Because if what you presented to the council is true, and my instincts say it is, then traditional power structures and allegiances may soon become secondary to more fundamental alignments. Meaning if my clan does carry dormant divine heritage, we need to understand what side of this cosmic equation we're on before others make that determination for us. Shikamaru leaned forward slightly. So tell me something that wasn't shared with the full council, It happens to those with divine bloodlines who don't awaken during this convergence. The question revealed Shikamaru's true concern. Naruto considered his response carefully. According to what I've learned, there are 3 possibilities, he finally answered. Some bloodlines are too diluted to awaken regardless of circumstances. They remain essentially human with perhaps slightly enhanced abilities. Others require specific triggers or circumstances beyond mere proximity to other awakening bloodlines. And the third possibility, some bloodlines remain dormant because their fundament lie incompatible with the particular divine energies driving this convergence. If they were to awaken, they would align with opposing forces. Understanding dawned in Shikamaru's eyes. You're saying some divine bloodlines might be naturally aligned against what you represent. It's possible. The Hyuga scrolls mention an ancient conflict between divine factions that eventually led to the separation of realms. If this convergence represents one faction's resurgence, then the opposing faction might eventually mobilize as well, Shikamaru finished. Creating a proxy war fought through human descendants who may not even understand the cosmic forces they're channeling. That's the worst-case scenario, yes. Shikamaru sat back, absorbing this information with characteristic analytical calm. Troublesome doesn't begin to cover it. No, it doesn't, Naruto agreed. But knowledge gives us options. If we can identify which bloodlines align with which factions before full awakening occurs, we might be able to prevent direct conflict. Or prepare for it, Shikamaru observed pragmatically. Either way, my clan's position becomes increasingly significant. He stood, having apparently reached some internal decision. I'll need to discuss this with my father. In the meantime, he wanted you to have this. He removed a small wooden box from his vest pocket and placed it on the table. The box was carved with intricate patterns reminiscent of intertwining shadows, so detailed they seemed almost to move when viewed from different angles. What is it? A shadow anchor. Old Nara clan artifact, supposedly crafted during the Sage of Six Paths era. Legend claims it can temporarily stabilize temporal fluctuations by anchoring shadows to their present state. That could be incredibly useful if my control slips during combat, Naruto observed, carefully opening the box. Inside rested a pendant, a piece of what appeared to be solidified shadow suspended within a frame of dark metal. The shadow fragment wasn't simply black, it contained depths that seemed to extend far beyond its physical dimensions. It's attuned to respond to specific energy signatures, Shikamaru explained. My father believes it will recognize and respond to your time manipulation abilities if they ever threaten to exceed your control. Thank him for me, Naruto said, genuinely touched by the gesture. This represents significant trust. The Nara clan is placing its bet, Shikamaru replied with blunt honesty. We've analyzed the available data and determined that supporting the Convi Argents offers better odds for long-term stability than opposing it. After Shikamaru departed, Naruto spent the evening studying the shadow anchor and reflecting on the day's developments. The Count C.'s cautious acceptance of his divine heritage represented a crucial first step, but the true challenges lay ahead, training to master his expanding abilities, protecting other awakening bloodlines, and preparing for increasingly dangerous confrontations with divine hunters. Morning came with unusual brilliance, sunlight piercing through his window with almost tangible presence. Naruto dressed fully in training attire that Hinata had specifically recommended, loose-fitting garments of undyed cotton that would purportedly minimize interference with lunar energy manipulation. The Hyuga Ansas Trail grounds lay beyond the clan's main compound, a secluded valley ringed by ancient standing stones, accessed through a path that wound between two mountains. As Naruto approached, he sensed the unique UE energy signature of the location, older than Konoha itself, resonating with accumulated power from centuries of moonlight absorption. Hinata awaited him in the center of the valley, seated in meditation upon a circular stone platform etched with lunar phases. Her eyes opened as he approached, the Byakugan activating not with the usual chakra pulse but with a gentle silver luminescence. You came, she said, rising gracefully. Did you doubt I would? A small smile touched her lips. No, our paths have always been connected, though I understand that better now than ever before. As she spoke, Naruto noticed subtle changes in her appearance since the council meeting. Her hair now contained strands of silver that caught the morning light, and her skin seemed to emit a faint pearlescent glow. Most striking were her eyes, still recognizably Byakugan, but with an ethereal quality that transcended the usual Dujutsu appearance. You've continued awakening, he observed. Yes, the process accelerates daily, she gestured to the stone circle. Please, join me, there is much to share before we begin actual training. They sat facing each other on the ancient platform, close enough Had Naruto could sense the unique rhythm of her heartbeat, steady and calm, yet slightly faster than normal human cadence, as though keeping time with some cosmic pulse beyond ordinary perception. The relationship between time and lunar energies is complex, Hinata began, her voice carrying new authority. The moon measures time for mortal existence, days, months, seasons, yet exists partially outside conventional temporal flow. This duality makes our bloodlines uniquely compatible. Compatible how, exactly? When lunar and temporal energies combine, they create what ancient texts call resonance stability, a harmonized field where both energies amplify each other without causing disruption. She extended her hand, palm up. May I demonstrate? Naruto placed his hand in hers, and immediately felt an unusual sensation, like cool silver water flowing through his temporal energy, not opposing but complementing it. Where his power typically manifested as manipulation of time's flow, hers appeared to create spaces where time could be selectively filtered or reflected. It's like, your energy creates stable pockets within the time stream, he observed with fascination. Exactly. Nar energy doesn't control time as yours does, but it can create sanctuaries where time behaves according to specific parameters. Her fingers lightly traced patterns against his palm. When combined, your ability to manipulate time gains precision, while my ability to create lunar sanctuaries gains flexibility. The demonstration continued, Hinata guiding him through increasingly complex energy exchanges. Each interaction revealed new aspects of their compatible heritages, his chronokinesis allowing her lunar manifestations to transcend normal limitations, while her stabilizing influence prevented his temporal manipulations from creating unintended ripple effects. The ancient texts describe 9 primary combined techniques, Hinata explained as they progressed. Each requiring perfect synchronization between lunar and temporal energies. Today we'll begin with the most fundamental, moonlight moment. She instructed Naruto to stand with her in the center of the stone circle, their hands joined to form a specific pattern, fingers interlaced but with precisely aligned gaps between certain digits. Moonlight moment creates a selective temporal sanctuary, she explained. A space we control which elements of time apply and which are suspended. Unlike your individual time manipulation, this technique creates stability that can be maintained indefinitely without draining your energy. Following her guidance, Naruto allowed his temporal essence to flow through their connected hands while Hinata channeled lunar energy along the same pathway. The energies spiraled around each other, creating a visual manifestation like intertwining streams of silver and gold light. Now, focus on expanding the resonance field, Hinata instructed, her voice soft but precise. Envision it encompassing this entire circle, creating boundaries where our combined influence determines temporal rules. As they concentrated together, the spiraling energies expanded outward, forming a dome of shimmering light that encapsulated the stone platform. Inside this dome, time itself seemed to acquire weight and texture, becoming almost tangible, malleable to their combined will rather than an abstract concept. Perfect, Hinata murmured, her eyes shining with silver light. Now, visualize a specific temporal parameter you wish to modify within this space. Naruto focused on the concept of simultaneity, the idea that within their created sanctuary, past, present, and future moments could temporarily coexist without contradiction. The dome's appearance shifted slightly, layers of translucent energy overlapping like sheets of colored glass. To his amazement, the stone circle began to reveal its own history, ghostly images of previous generations performing similar rituals becoming visible as translucent overlays on present reality. Simultaneously, potential futures flickered at the edges of perception, possibilities rather than certainties, but clearly visible within their created field. Naruto struggled to find adequate words. Moonlight moment, Hinata confirmed. The technique that allows us to study time without being subject to its normal constraints. For hours, they practiced maintaining and modifying the temporal sanctuary, exploring its capabilities and limitations. Unlike Naruto's direct chronokinesis, which imposed his will upon time itself, this combined technique created a collaborative relationship with temporal forces, a negotiated space where certain rules could be suspended while others remained intact. By midday, they could maintain the moonlight moment field indefinitely with minimal conscious effort, their energies having established a self-sustaining resonance pattern. Within this field, they experimented with various temporal modifications, accelerating plant growth while leaving animal life unaffected, creating selective stasis that preserved certain objects in unchanging condition, even briefly manifesting echo versions of themselves from moments ago to demonstrate concepts. This is incredible, Naruto said as they finally released the technique, allowing normal temporal flow to resume throughout the stone circle. I never imagined such precise control was possible. It's not control in the conventional sense, Hinata corrected gently. More a harmony with fundamental forces. Your time heritage and my lunar NCE create balance that neither could achieve alone. As they took a brief rest, sharing a meal Hinata had prepared, Naruto found himself studying her with new appreciation. The shy, hesitant girl he had known for years had transformed, not by becoming someone else, but by fully embodying aspects of herself that had always existed beneath the surface. You've changed, he observed. Not just physically with the awakening, but your confidence, your presence. A soft smile touched her lips. My human insecurities and my divine heritage were always at odds. As the lunar essence awakens, I find clarity about my true nature and purpose. Her pearl-like eyes met his directly. The feelings that made me shy around you haven't diminished, quite the opposite. But they're now integrated with understanding of our cosmic connection, which brings its own certainty. Our cosmic connection, Naruto repeated thoughtfully. You mentioned before that time and lunar energies are naturally compatible. Is that why? He hesitated, unsure how to phrase the question. Why I've always been drawn to you. Hinata finished for him. Yes and no. Divine resonance likely created an unconscious recognition between our essences. But my feelings developed through knowing you as a person, your determination, your compassion, your refusal to surrender to circumstances. She reached across the small space between them, her fingers lightly brushing his. The divine connection enhances but doesn't create genuine bonds. It simply reveals compatibility that transcends ordinary understanding. The touch sent a cascade of sensations through Naruto, not merely physical awareness but a deeper recognition, as though parts of his being that had always existed in isolation suddenly found their complementary counterparts. For a breathtaking moment, he perceived Hinata not just with his physical senses but with his awakening divine awareness, seeing the intricate pattern of lunar energy that formed her true essence. The perfect symmetry it created with his own temporal nature. Before he could respond, a distant rumble shattered the tranquil atmosphere. Both turned toward the sound, a thunderous crash followed by alarming chakra spikes from the direction of Konoha. Something's wrong, Naruto said, already on his feet. Hinata activated her Byakugan, the veins around her eyes more pronounced as silver chakra enhanced her visual range. The village is under attack, she reported tensely. Multiple incursions at the northern and eastern boundaries. Unusual energy signatures, not conventional chakra. Divine hunters. No. Her expression grew increasingly troubled. Something different. The energy pattern resembles temporal distortion, but chaotic, uncontrolled. Without further discussion, they abandoned their training site, racing toward Konoha at top speed. As they crested the final hill overlooking the village, the situation became visually apparent, swirling vortices of distort. Space had opened at multiple points along the village perimeter, disgorging strange, crystalline entities that moved with uncanny precision. Chronofragments, Naruto muttered, the knowledge surfacing from some deep well of inherited memory. Shattered pieces of collapsed timestreams given temporary form. What could create such things? Hinata asked as they paused briefly to assess the situation. Not what. Who. This has the signature of the hunter commander. Naruto's expression hardened. He's not just hunting me, he's using weapons that target my specific divine heritage. They quickly rejoined the village defense forces, finding Tsunade directing operations from a command post near the Hokage Tower. About time you two showed up, the Hokage said tersely. These things resist conventional attacks. Physical strikes pass through them, ninjutsu barely slows them down. They're not fully materialized in our reality, Naruto explained. They exist partially in fractured timestreams, which is why conventional attacks aren't effective. Then how do we stop them? We need to fully anchor them to this reality before they can be defeated. Naruto turned to Hinata. The moon, light moment technique we just practiced. If we modify it to create a field of temporal stability, we could force them to fully materialize within a single time stream, she finished, immediately understanding. But we'd need to cover large areas simultaneously. We'll need amplification points, Naruto decided. Strategically positioned shinobi who can relay and extend our resonance field. Tsunade nodded sharply. Tell me what you need. Within minutes, they had established a network of relay points throughout the village, shinobi with the highest chakra control positioned according to Hinata's guidance to create an interlinking pattern that could channel and amplify their combined technique across Konoha. At the center of this network, atop the Hokage monument, Naruto and Hinata prepared to implement their hastily adapted technique on a scale far beyond their morning practice. This will drain us significantly, Hinata warned as they took position. Covering the entire villa, GE requires exponentially more energy than our training field. We don't have a choice, Naruto replied. Those fragments will continue materializing until the entire village is overrun. They joined hands, forming the same configuration they had practiced earlier but now standing back to create a dual-directional flow. As they synchronized their breathing, their respective energies began to manifest visibly, Naruto's golden temporal aura intertwining with Hinata's silvery lunar radiance. Moonlight moment. Village sanctuary, they intoned together, pushing their combined energies outward through the relay network. The technique expanded with breathtaking speed, amplified and redirected by the positioned shinobi until a massive dome of shimmering energy encompassed the entire village. Within this dome, time stabilized into a single, coherent flow, eliminating the fractured temporal states that allowed the chronofragments to maintain their semi-material existence. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Throughout Konoha, the crystalline entities suddenly solidified, becoming fully material as they were forced to exist entirely within the current timestream. This materialization made them vulnerable to conventional attacks, and Konoha's defenders quickly capitalized on this advantage. But maintaining the village-wide temporal field required immense concentration and energy. Naruto felt the strain immediately, not just physical fatigue but a deeper draining of his divine essence. Beside him, Hinata's silver aura flickered periodically as she fought to maintain her contribution to the shared technique. "Hold steady," he encouraged, tightening his grip on her hands. Just a little longer. Throughout the village, the now vulnerable chronofragments were systematically eliminated by coordinated attacks from ninja teams. Sasuke's Chidori proved particularly effective against their crystalline structures, while Sakura's precise chakra control allowed her to identify and target structural weaknesses. Just as the last of the entities were being dispatched, a new disturbance manifested, a massive temporal vortex forming directly above the Hokage monument, far larger than those that had produced the chronofragments. From this vortex emerged a single figure that radiated such intense divine energy that it was physically painful to look at directly. The Hunter Commander had arrived. Unlike the more humanoid divine hunters they had previously encountered, this entity appeared almost architecturally constructed, a geometrically perfect arrangement of crystalline components surrounding a core of pure temporal energy. Where a face might be, there was only a reflective surface that showed distorted images of past and future moments in constant flux. "Convergence catalyst detected," the entity announced, its voice resonating not through air but directly within the minds of all present. "Timeline corruption in progress. Purification protocols initiated." The Hunter Commander extended what might have been arms, though they appeared more as articulated crystalline appendages. From these emerged beams of intense energy that struck the temporal stability field, maintaining the moonlight moment technique. Naruto felt the impact as a physical blow, nearly losing his concentration as pain lanced through his divine essence. Beside him, Hinata gasped but maintained her position, her determination evident in the renewed brightness of her silver aura. "He's trying to shatter our field," Naruto gritted out. "If he succeeds, the chronofragments will rematerialize throughout the village. We need to do more than defend," Hinata replied, her voice strained but resolved. "We need to counterattack." "How?" "Our energy is tied up maintaining the field." Hinata's eyes met his, determination shining through the pain. "The second combined technique, lunar reflection. We turn his temporal attack back upon himself." Understanding dawned. "That requires perfect synchronization and precise energy control. We haven't practiced it yet." "Then we'll have to get it right the first time," she replied simply. Without releasing their primary technique, they adjusted their stance and energy flow, creating a secondary pattern within the existing resonance. Where moonlight moment created stability, lunar reflection was designed to capture, amplify, and redirect energy along predetermined pathways. "Follow my lead," Hinata instructed, her voice taking on the ritualistic cadence of ancient Hyuga ceremonies. Lunar essence captures, temporal essence redirects. Together they create the perfect mirror. Their combined aura shifted, developing a reflective quality like the surface of a still pond under moonlight. As the Hunter Commander launched an other devastating attack against their field, the energy struck this newly formed reflective layer and rebounded, not simply returning to its source but amplified and focused by their combined technique. The redirected energy struck the Hunter Commander with unexpected precision, penetrating the geometric perfection of its form to destabilize the temporal core within. The entity emitted a sound unlike anything human, a multidimensional disruption that manifested as physical pain in those who heard it. "Tactical error. Recalculating," the commander announced, its form briefly destabilizing before reconstituting in a slightly different configuration. "Direct intervention inefficient. Alternative approach required." The entity ceased its direct attack on their field, instead turning its attention to the village below. With precise gestures, it began creating localized temporal anomalies throughout Konoha. Buildings aging centuries in seconds, areas of accelerated time where people moved at impossible speeds. Pockets where time reversed or froze completely. He's trying to overwhelm our technique by creating too many disruptions for us to stabilize simultaneously, Naruto realized. He can't maintain the field and counter all these individual anomalies. Hinata's expression showed momentary uncertainty before resolving into determined clarity. We need the third technique, Eternal Moment. That's the most advanced of all the combined techniques, Naruto protested. The scrolls said it requires perfect divine resonance between practitioners. Do you trust me? She asked simply. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Naruto felt something beyond their tactical cooperation, a profound connection that transcended their individual existences. This wasn't merely a kunoichi he had known since childhood or a training partner with compatible abilities. This was a soul whose essence complemented his own at the most fundamental level. Completely, he answered. Without further hesitation, they shifted their energy pattern once more, abandoning the defensive stability of Moonlight Moment for something far more ambitious. The Eternal Moment technique didn't merely stabilize time or reflect temporal energy. It temporarily suspended the conventional rules of temporal progression entirely, creating a space where past, present, and future existed simultaneously under the practitioner's conscious direction. Their combined aura transformed from reflective silver gold to something more transcendent, a radiance that seemed to exist both within and beyond conventional perception. Neither fully material nor purely spiritual, this radiance expanded outward, enveloping first them, then the Hokage monument, and finally the entire village in a field of absolute temporal sovereignty. Within this field, the Hunter Commander's manipulations simply ceased to function. The local anomalies he had created froze in their current state, neither progressing nor dissipating but red temporarily irrelevant within the higher-order temporal framework Naruto and Hinata had established. Impossible, the entity declared, its geometric form showing signs of confusion as it attempted to analyze the phenomenon encompassing Konoha. Mortal vessels cannot channel this level of divine authority. We're not just mortal vessels, Naruto responded, his voice carrying effortlessly through the Eternal Moment field. We're the next evolution, divine heritage expressed through human consciousness, creating something neither realm anticipated. The Hunter Commander attempted to retreat into its temporal vortex, but found itself unable to establish the necessary connection while within the Eternal Moment field. For the first time, its crystalline form displayed what might have been alarm. Tactical withdrawal required, reassessment of convergence parameters necessary. With visible effort, the entity forced open a small rift in reality, not the elegant vortex it had arrived through, but a jagged tear that appeared to cause it significant strain to maintain. Before disappearing through this escape route, it directed a final communication specifically at Naruto. Your existence violates fundamental cosmic law. Time Death Offspring. The Celestial Council will not permit the convergence to complete. More effective measures will be deployed. With that ominous declaration, the Hunter Commander vanished. The rift sealing behind it with a sound like shattering glass followed by absolute silence. As the immediate threat disappeared, Naruto and Hinata carefully dismantled the Eternal Moment field, restoring normal temporal flow throughout Konoha in carefully controlled stages to prevent shock to the system. The process required precise coordination and took nearly an hour to complete safely. When they finally released the last elements of the technique, both dropped to their knees in exhaustion, their respective auras dimming to barely visible glimmers around their forms. That was, Naruto began, struggling to find adequate words. Perfect synchronization, Hinata finished, her voice barely above a whisper. The texts described it, but experiencing it is. She shook her head slightly, words failing her as well. Around them, Konoha gradually returned to normal operation. The localized temporal anomalies created by the Hunter Commander had been neutralized during the Eternal Moment, leaving only minor residual effects that would dissipate naturally over the next few hours. Cleanup and recovery operations were already underway throughout the village, coordinated with the efficient precision that had made Konoha's response units legendary among the 5 great nations. Tsunade joined them atop the monument, her medical expertise immediately evident as she performed quick diagnostic jutsu on both exhausted shinobi. Significant chakra depletion, minor divine essence instability, but nothing permanent, she concluded. Though I'd recommend against attempting whatever that last technique was again without proper preparation and recovery time. Eternal Moment, Hinata supplied. It's meant to be performed after months of progressive training in lesser combined techniques. Well, necessity accelerated your curriculum, Tsunade observed dryly. And possibly saved the village in the process. Her expression softened slightly. The resonance between your abilities is remarkable. Even Hiyashi was impressed, and that man is practically allergic to displaying approval. Despite their exhaustion, both Naruto and Hinata managed small smiles at this assessment. The hunter commander will return, Naruto said, his expression growing serious again. And next time he'll be better prepared for our combined techniques. Then we'll need to be better prepared as well. Tsunade replied pragmatically, starting with bringing in additional divine bloodlines to expand our defensive capabilities. The convergence participants mentioned in the prophecies, Hinata nodded. Ocean, lightning, winter, and shadow flame. Our intelligence network has confirmed unusual activity matching those descriptions, Tsunade confirmed. Edi dispatched diplomatic envoys to initiate contact, but we may need more direct approaches for some cases. Meaning? Naruto asked. Meaning I'm sending you personally to meet with the Mizukage in 3 days' time. Our reports indicate her control over water has expanded far beyond normal limits, consistent with awakening divine heritage linked to primordial ocean deities. Mei Terumi, Naruto said thoughtfully. I've never met her. She's formidable, Tsunade said with careful neutrality. And potentially crucial to establishing a united front against these divine hunters. AF. Chair receiving additional instructions and a strict order to rest for at least 24 hours, Naruto and Hinata made their way down from the monument. The village below showed signs of the attack, buildings with accelerated decay. Areas where plant life had grown with unnatural speed, zones where water had temporarily reversed its flow, but the structural damage was minimal compared to what might have occurred without their intervention. I should escort you home, Naruto said as they reached the base of the monument. You expended at least as much energy as I did during those techniques. Hinata smiled gently. I would appreciate the company, though I suspect we're supporting each other equally at this point. As they walked through Konoha's streets, citizens nodded respectfully or called out words of gratitude. News of their role in repelling the attack had spread quickly, adding a new dimension to Naruto's already complex public image. No longer just the Jinchuriki or the Unexpi. CT Edley's skilled ninja, now he was openly acknowledged as something more, something with cosmic significance. The attention might once have been exactly what he craved. Now, it felt almost incidental paired to the profound connection he had experienced during the Eternal Moment technique. For those transcendent minutes, he and Hinata had shared not just coordinated actions but a fundamental unity of being, their separate consciousnesses maintaining identity while simultaneously experiencing a higher-order integration. You're very quiet, Hinata observed as they approached the Hyuga compound. Just thinking about what happened during that last technique. The connection between us. I've never experienced anything like it. Her expression softened with understanding. The eternal moment creates a unique bond between practitioners. The ancient texts describe it as two souls briefly sharing a single divine perspective without surrendering their individual nature. That's a remarkably accurate description. They paused at the compound entrance, both reluctant to end their time together despite their obvious exhaustion. Thank you, Naruto said simply. For today, for the training, for everything. Hinata's response wasn't verbal. Instead, she stepped forward and embraced him gently, her head resting against his chest. The contact created a subtle resonance between air auras, golden temporal and silver lunar energies intertwining in delicate harmony. Rest well, Naruto-kun, she finally said, stepping back with a soft smile. The journey has only just begun. As he watched her disappear into the compound, Naruto felt a curious certainty settling into his awareness, not a premonition exactly, but a deep recognition of patterns aligning across multiple dimensions. The convergence was accelerating, drawing together bloodlines separated for millennia by divine decree, and whatever dangers that process entailed, the connections it created, like the one he now shared with Hinata, represented something worth protecting at any cost. The evening sky above Konoha gradually filled with stars, their light reaching Earth after journeys of incomprehensible duration. To ordinary perception, they appeared fixed and unchanging. But to Naruto's awakened senses, each represented a unique temporal signature, some already extinct, their light merely the final echo of stellar lives concluded long ago. Others still in the process of formation, their present reality not yet fully manifest. Time and eternity, moment and forever, individual and cosmic, paradoxes that had once seemed philosophical abstractions now revealed themselves as complementary truths, different perspectives on a reality far more complex and beautiful than conventional understanding could encompass. As the son of time and death, he stood at the intersection of these apparent contradictions, embodying their resolution in his very existence. And as the catalyst for the convergence, he would soon bring together others who similarly transcended conventional categories, divine heritage expressed through human consciousness, creating something unprecedented in the cosmos. The hunter command, warning echoed in his memory, more effective measures will be deployed. Naruto gazed at the star-filled sky, a quiet determination settling within him. Whatever came next, whatever effective measures the Celestial Council deployed, he would face it not alone, but connected to those whose essence resonated with his own. The hands of fate were moving, ancient patterns shifting toward new configurations. And for perhaps the first time in cosmic history, those hands might find themselves guided by the very beings they had once sought to control. Chapter 3 End. The End. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.